Hey guys, tonight we're going to wrap ourselves up in a real London mystery one that started with a fog so thick, so heavy, it didn't just obscure the world, it seemed to consume it. Imagine if you can walking down a cobbled street you've known your whole life. Maybe the gas lamps are just starting to sputter on casting pools of weak yellowish light onto the wet stone. You hear the distant clip-clop of a horse-drawn cart, the murmur of voices from a nearby pub, the faint rhythmic lapping of the Thames against the docks. This is London familiar, alive, breathing. But then you lift your eyes and you see it. Not the usual gray haze that rolls in off the river, sometimes the kind that makes you pull your collar up and mutter about the weather. No, this is different. This is moving. It's a wall of white, dense, almost solid-looking, creeping towards you from the east, silent and relentless. You blink, shake your head, maybe rub your eyes. It feels like a trick of the light, or maybe just another particularly nasty bout of London air pollution, the kind that could make you cough up a lung, though probably not literally. Or maybe it could. You probably won't survive this, at least not without a serious case of historical anxiety. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. While you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments. It's always cool to see where everyone is tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing there on that familiar street. Let's say it's late autumn, the air already carries a chill that promises winter, and the smell of coal smoke hangs low. Before this, thing appeared. The evening was settling in as it always did. Shopkeepers were pulling down their shutters with a resounding clatter. Children were being called in from their games of marbles or tag in the narrow alleyways. And the pubs were beginning to glow with inviting warmth, spilling laughter, and the faint scent of ale onto the pavement. London was a city of millions, a pulsing heart of the British Empire, full of noise, energy, and a comfortable, if sometimes chaotic, rhythm. You were just another beat in that rhythm, maybe heading home after a long day, maybe meeting a friend for a drink, maybe just strolling because the air before wasn't too foul. Think about the sounds, the constant underlying thrum of traffic. Not cars, obviously, but carriages, carts. The rumble of the underground trains far below, the shouts of street vendors hawking their wares, the distant chiming of Big Ben, keeping time for the entire nation. It was a symphony of urban life, loud and proud. And the smells. Oh, the smells were a whole other story. A glorious, terrifying mix of coal smoke, horse manure, damp wool frying kippers brewing tea, and something vaguely sulfurous from the river. You were used to it, probably barely noticed it most of the time, like how you tune out the hum of your own refrigerator. It was just London. A bit grubby, a bit loud, endlessly fascinating. You remember the specific kind of rain that fell sometimes, a fine, persistent drizzle that seemed to soak you to the bone in minutes. That was a different kind of dampness. This fog, when you first saw it, looked dry, or at least it didn't look wet in the way rain was. It had a peculiar quality to it, a certain flatness, almost like thick, unbleached cotton wool being pulled across the horizon. It swallowed up the details of the buildings in the distance first. The spires of churches, the taller chimneys, the familiar outline of bridges. One moment they were there, etched against the bruised twilight sky. The next they were gone, consumed by this advancing whiteness. As it got closer, you started to notice other things. The air didn't just feel colder, it felt still. The usual little gusts of wind that swirled debris around your ankles simply stopped. The sounds of the city seemed to die down, not because people had suddenly gone quiet, but because the fog seemed to absorb sound. The distant rumble of traffic became muffled. The shouts sounded like they were coming from behind a thick wall. The laughter from the pub seemed to fade away before it reached you. It was like someone was slowly turning down the volume knob on the world. And it wasn't just the absence of sound. There was something else, a strange sensation. A tingling on your skin. Or was that just the cold? A peculiar taste in the back of your mouth. Metallic, like old dust. You couldn't quite place it, and you probably dismissed it as your imagination running wild. After all, it was just fog, right? London had fog, lots of it. Pea soupers were legendary. You'd heard stories of fog so thick you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Fogs that brought the city to a standstill. Fogs that made breathing a real chore. Historians still argue whether the notorious super fogs of London were more a product of domestic coal fires or industrial emissions. But either way, they were certainly not conducive to a long life. This felt different, though. Less like pollution, more like an environmental event. You watch it approach, and instinctively you take a step back. Others on the street are doing the same. Heads are craning, fingers are pointing. There's a low murmur rippling through the small crowd that's forming a mix of curiosity and unease. A bobby on the corner, usually unflappable, is staring at it with a furrowed brow, his usual air of authority replaced by a look of confusion. He adjusts his helmet, takes a step towards it, then hesitates. Even the animals seem spooked. Pigeons, usually strutting about like they own the place, are suddenly taking flight in a flurry of gray wings, circling frantically before disappearing upwards away from the advancing mist. A stray dog sniffing around a lamppost lets out a low whine and scampers off down an alley. The fog rolls over the end of the street, and you can see it for what it is up close. It's not translucent, it's opaque. A solid wall of white that swallows everything it touches. The lamppost at the corner just a moment ago, a beacon of light, is now just a faint glow bleeding through the thickness, rapidly dimming until it vanishes completely. The pub sign hanging cheerily above the door disappears as if it had been erased. And the sounds, they don't just fade, they stop. The murmur of the crowd ahead of the fog, the distant clip-clop of the cart, gone. Silence falls in its wake. It reaches your street. You can feel a distinct drop in temperature, a sudden unnatural cold that seems to seep into your bones instantly, regardless of the layers of wool you're wearing. And that strange smell is stronger now. Metallic, earthy, something you can't quite name, but that makes the back of your throat feel tight. You pull a scarf up over your mouth and nose a futile gesture against something that feels more substantial than mere vapor. It engulfs the first buildings on your street. They don't fade away, they just cease to be visible. The lines between building and fog dissolve, leaving only a shifting, formless white. It's moving faster now than it looked from a distance, flowing over the ground, like liquid climbing the walls, pouring into doorways and alleyways. The bobby takes another hesitant step back, his hand hovering near his truncheon, a weapon utterly useless against this silent physical presence. People are backing away more rapidly now, a sense of genuine alarm replacing the initial curiosity. Someone screams. Not a scream of pain, but of pure terror, a sudden sharp sound that is instantly cut off as the fog rolls over the person who made it. You don't see what happened. You only hear the sound and then the silence that follows a silence deeper and more profound than before. The fog doesn't slow down. It keeps coming, a relentless, silent tide of white. You turn and run. You don't think about where you're going, just away from the advancing wall. You hear others running too, their footsteps muffled by the sudden silence. You glance back over your shoulder and see the fog filling the street behind you, a solid white mass pushing forward. The familiar shapes of the buildings, the comforting glow of the gas lamps you just passed, swallowed, erased. It's like watching the world being painted over with a thick coat of white paint, and the brush is moving impossibly fast. You reach the end of your street, bursting out into a wider thoroughfare. Here the scene is even more chaotic. Carriages are pulling up short, their horses skittering nervously. Pedestrians are milling about, pointing, shouting questions that no one can answer. And then you see it on this street too. Fog is arriving from multiple directions, now flowing around corners, down side streets, a silent, multi-pronged invasion. The air here feels different, too colder, carrying that strange metallic tang. A newspaper boy, usually yelling the headlines at the top of his lungs, is standing frozen. His papers scattered on the ground, his eyes wide with fear as he stares at the approaching mist. A group of ladies dressed in their evening finery are huddled together, their faces pale beneath their bonnets. A costermonger's cart laden with apples has been abandoned, its horse tied to a lamppost and whinnying piteously. The usual bustle of the street has dissolved into a tableau of shock and confusion. You realize this isn't just a fog, this is the fog. This is something entirely new, entirely terrifying. You've lived through smog so thick you had to feel your way along the wall, yes. You've navigated streets where the air burned your lungs. But this is different. This feels deliberate. It moves with a purpose, a slow, unstoppable hunger. And that scream you heard, what happened? You look around trying to find someone, anyone who knows what's going on. But everyone has the same expression of bewildered fear. The Bobby from your street emerges onto the wider road, his face grim, shouting into the chaos, trying to restore some semblance of order. But his voice sounds thin and reedy against the encroaching silence. The fog is closing in on this wider street, now flowing like a silent river of white. One moment you see a horse-drawn omnibus lumbering down the road, its passengers' faces pressed against the steamy windows. The next, the fog rolls over it, and it's gone. Not crashed, not stopped, just absorbed. You squint, trying to see through the leading edge of the mist, but it's like looking at a solid wall. There's no visibility at all, no hint of the street or the buildings, or the omnibus that was just there. Just white. Panic is starting to set in a cold knot in your stomach. People are no longer just standing and staring. They're scattering, running in all directions, bumping into each other, their faces etched with terror. The Bobby blows his whistle, a sharp, piercing sound, but the fog seems to dull it almost instantly, the sound cut off at the edge of the mist. He too takes a step back, his eyes darting around clearly out of his depth. A woman near you trips and falls. You hesitate for a second, instinct telling you to help, but the fog is so close now it's cold breath on your cheek. Someone else pulls her to her feet and they both scramble away just as the leading edge of the fog washes over the spot where she fell. You don't see them vanish, you just see the spot they were standing on disappear into the white. You turn and run again, joining the stream of fleeing people. The air rushing into your lungs is cold and carries that strange metallic smell. Your heart is hammering against your ribs. This was supposed to be just another evening in London. A bit chilly, maybe a bit grimy, but familiar. Now it feels like the city itself is being unmade piece by piece, swallowed by this unnatural silent white. The fog is relentless. It doesn't seem to be dissipating or slowing down. It just keeps coming, a physical manifestation of dread. You hear shouts, cries, the clatter of hooves and wheels, all rapidly being silenced as the mist overtakes them. The world behind you is being erased. The world ahead is uncertain, but at least for now it's still visible. You keep running, not knowing where to go, just knowing you have to get away from the edge of the white. The familiar sounds and smells of London are fading, replaced by the chilling silence in the strange odor of the fog. This is not a typical London evening. This is something else entirely, and it has only just begun. You're running your lungs, burning the strange metallic cold of the air, biting at your throat. The sounds of panic are all around you now. Ragged breaths, frantic footsteps, startled cries, and the muffled, confused shouts of those further out, still untouched, but seeing the silent white wave washing over everything in its path. It's like a nightmare where the ground behind you is disappearing, only it's not the ground, it's everything. The familiar brick walls of buildings, the ornate lampposts, the shop fronts with their fading painted signs, even the very cobblestones under your feet as the fog creeps forward. All are being swallowed by this opaque, formless mist. You glance back again, and the street you were just on is gone, completely gone. There's no hint of the buildings, no glow of gas lamps, no sound of pursuit. Just a solid, shifting wall of white advancing with unnerving speed and silence. It's not blowing in the wind. There is no wind inside it or around its edges. It feels like it's moving under its own power, or perhaps being pushed by some unseen, irresistible force. The panic you felt earlier, the cold knot in your stomach, is now a full-blown surge of adrenaline urging you forward away from the consuming silence. Others are running alongside you, a desperate impromptu flock, scattering from the predator. A man in a bowler hat stumbles, and for a terrifying second, you think he's going to fall back into the mist, but someone grabs his arm and yanks him forward. A woman is openly weeping, clutching a small child to her chest as they flee. A delivery boy, his basket of parcels abandoned, is sprinting with surprising speed. The usual stoic London reserve has evaporated, replaced by raw, instinctual fear. No one is stopping to help anyone else who falls behind. It's every soul for themselves against this silent, unstoppable tide. You burst onto another main road, hoping for some clarity, some escape, some authority figure. Who knows what to do? But it's the same chaos here, just on a grander scale. Carriages are jammed, horses rearing in fright. People are abandoning vehicles, spilling out onto the street to join the fleeing crowds. The fog is already here too. Tendrils of white seeping down side streets, rolling over bridges, creeping across Trafalgar Square. Its silent advance causing widespread pandemonium. You see it engulfing the base of Nelson's column, the familiar lion statues disappearing into the mist one by one. It feels unreal, like a staged effect for a play, but the screams and the raw terror on people's faces tell you this is brutally, undeniably real. And the disappearances, you start seeing more of them now, not just hearing about the scream that was cut short. You see a hansom cab, its driver frantically trying to turn his horse caught too close to the edge. As the white washes over it, you don't see it struggle or tip over. It just vanishes. Horse, cab driver, passenger, gone in an instant, absorbed into the opaque white. It's not like they're hidden. It's like they were never there at all. A group of people huddled together, seemingly frozen by fear, right in the path of an advancing tongue of fog. You watch horrified as the mist touches the first person, then the next. There's no sound, no struggle, no cry. They simply cease to be visible, their outlines dissolving into the white. It's chilling in its efficiency. There's no lingering shape, no faint silhouette, just white. You hear theories being shouted in fragmented bursts as people run. It's a German gas attack. Someone screams, echoing the wartime anxieties that still lingered in the air after the Great War. Historians still argue whether the sheer scale of London's industrial and domestic pollution in the early 20th century was a greater threat to public health long-term than any potential chemical warfare, but in the moment, gas was a terrifying, imaginable enemy. Someone else yells something about the end of days. Another mutters about subterranean vapors released by tunneling, a nod to the massive complex underground network beneath the city. Nobody knows what's happening, and that not knowing is almost as terrifying as the thing itself. The sensory details of the fog itself are becoming clearer. Now that you've been close to it, felt its edge brush past you. It's not the damp chill of a typical London mist. It's a dry, bone-deep cold that seems to penetrate clothes instantly. The smell, it's hard to describe. Metallic, yes, like rust and old coins, but also something earthy, like turned soil after rain, mixed with a pungent chemical tang that makes your eyes water and your nose sting. And the silence inside it is profound, almost crushing. Sounds from the outside world vanish as soon as the fog touches them, and you can't hear anything coming from within the mist itself. It's an active absence of sound, not just a muffling. You see a group of soldiers, maybe from a nearby barracks or just caught up in the chaos, trying to form a line, bayonets fixed. A futile gesture against an enemy you can't stab or shoot. The fog rolls over the first rank and they disappear. The second rank hesitates, then breaks, scattering in terror. The military, the symbol of order and defense, is as helpless as a fleeing civilian. It's a stark and terrifying illustration of the unprecedented nature of this event. This isn't a riot, a fire, or an invasion they train for. You keep running, your legs burning, heart pounding like a drum against your ribs. You dodge around overturned carts, leap over discarded belongings, narrowly avoid colliding with other desperate souls. The air is thick with the smell of panic and that strange metallic fog odor. You try to cover your mouth and nose with your coat, but it feels useless. The cold seeps in the smell seems to bypass any barrier. A thought surfaces absurdly in your panicked mind. Remember those old stories about people getting lost in fog sometimes for days? Or the one about the guy who walked off a pier he knew intimately because the fog was so thick. This is like that, amplified 1,000 times, except it's not just getting lost. It's ceasing to exist. The sheer scale of the disappearances is starting to become apparent even through the confusion. Wherever the fog touches, things vanish. People, carriages, market stalls, even the very pavement. You see a child's dropped toy, a small wooden soldier, lying on the ground just before the fog overtakes it. You watch it disappear, swallowed by the white. It's a small, insignificant detail in the grand, terrifying tableau, but it sticks with you. The indiscriminate nature of it all. It doesn't seem to matter if you're rich or poor, young or old soldier, or civilian, vital or inanimate. The fog consumes everything equally. The realization hits you with the force of a physical blow. This isn't just bad weather. This isn't a normal environmental hazard, no matter how polluted the air might have been before. London's pea soupers were often so thick with soot that they earned the nickname fog burgers, a whimsical name for a genuinely dangerous phenomenon. But this is something else entirely. This is an event, a terrifying, inexplicable event that is actively removing pieces of the city and its population. It's the dawning of the understanding that the familiar, grimy, bustling London you knew is being systematically erased. You hear a horse scream, a high-pitched, terrified sound that cuts through the general din of panic before it too is silenced as the fog envelops it. The thought of the animals suffering in this, whatever this is, adds another layer of horror. Dogs barking frantically, then stopping. Cats hissing, then silence. Even the ubiquitous sparrows seem to have vanished from the air above the fog. You find yourself on a bridge looking out over the Thames, but the river isn't visible. The fog has reached the embankment and is pouring over the sides, turning the usually brown water into a featureless expanse of white. Ships moored along the riverbanks are being swallowed whole. The boats on the river are disappearing midstream. It's as if the fog is claiming not just the land, but the water and the air above it as well. The bridge itself feels exposed. You can see the fog advancing along the river on both sides, creeping up the bridge approach behind you. It's like standing on a rapidly shrinking island of visibility in a rising tide of white. People on the bridge are scattering, some trying to reach the other side, others turning back. There's nowhere safe to go. The fog is everywhere. You lean over the railing, peering down into the white below, straining your ears for any sound. Nothing. Just the absolute unnerving silence. It's a silence that feels heavy charged like the air before a storm, but instead of thunder, there's just nothing. It feels like the fog is actively eating sound, not just muffling it. A chilling thought takes root. What happens to the people and things the fog consumes? Do they just cease to exist? Are they transported somewhere else? Are they dissolved? The total lack of any trace, any sound, any indication of what occurs within the mist is perhaps the most terrifying aspect of all. It's an unknown fate, instantaneous and silent. You see a newspaper fluttering in the air, caught in a gust of wind, before it drifts towards the edge of the fog and is swallowed. Even something as flimsy as a sheet of paper disappears completely. It reinforces the idea that this isn't just a visual obstruction. It's something more fundamental, something that seems to negate physical presence. You need to keep moving. The bridge is quickly being enveloped. The cold is deepening and the metallic, earthy smell is stronger here, mingling with the faint scent of the river that used to be. You turn and join the stream of people fleeing the bridge, heading into the parts of the city that are still visible, but rapidly shrinking. Where can you go that the fog won't reach? Is there anywhere? You remember reading a peculiar little story once, maybe in a penny dreadful or a newspaper account, about a London alleyway that was said to sometimes just disappear. One moment it was there connecting two streets, the next it was gone, replaced by a blank wall, only to reappear later, often in a slightly different spot. This quirky tidbit about disappearing alleys was likely just urban folklore or misremembered directions given the city's labyrinthine layout, but right now it feels terrifyingly relevant. What if this fog is like that alley, but on a massive citywide scale? What if it's making things and people disappear, not just from sight, but from reality? The dawning realization is a cold dread settling deep in your gut. This is an existential threat. Not a fire, not a flood, not even a war where you can see your enemy. This is an enemy you cannot see, cannot fight, and cannot escape. It's the silence that is the most unnerving part. The total lack of noise from within the fog suggests a finality, an absence of struggle, a complete nullification of whatever is consumed. It's like the world is being unmade, one silent, terrifying gulp at a time, and you are caught in the middle of it, running for your life away from the edge of oblivion. Every step you take feels like a desperate gamble against an opponent that is everywhere and nowhere all at once. You stumble into a small packed square that the fog hasn't reached yet, a small island in a sea of white and panic. People are pouring in from connecting streets, their faces streaked with tears and grime, their clothes torn. The air is thick with the smell of fear, sweat, and that lingering metallic tang of the fog. Your own lungs ache and your legs feel like lead, but the sheer relief of being out of the immediate path of the advance for a moment at least is immense. You lean against a wall, gasping for breath, watching the chaotic scene unfold. There's no order, just a swirling mass of humanity. People are calling out names looking for loved ones. Others are huddled together, weeping silently. Some are shouting theories wild and desperate, trying to impose some kind of logic on the nightmare they've just witnessed. You hear snippets. It's the end times. A government experiment gone wrong. An earthquake released something from underground. You manage to catch your breath and look back the way you came. The fog is a stark, unnaturally straight line where the street used to be. It's not fluffy or wispy. It's a solid, opaque wall of brilliant white, unnerving in its stillness. There's no movement within it, no sound emanating from it. Just a profound, absolute silence that seems to press against your eardrums. It's like looking at the edge of the world, where everything familiar abruptly stops. The contrast between the chaos in the square and the utter stillness of the fog line is jarring. Here there is noise and movement, the desperate energy of survival. They're just a silent, consuming void. You see a man cautiously approach the edge of the white, extending a trembling hand. Before his fingers even seem to touch it, his arm vanishes up to the elbow. He stumbles back with a cry, clutching his arm, which is now just gone. Not bleeding, not mangled, just neatly ending at the elbow, the cloth of his jacket fraying slightly at the impossible edge. The man collapses screaming, and those around him shrink back in horror, the wild theories dying on their lips. Historians still argue whether the psychological shock of these clean, silent disappearances was more profound than the horror of traditional violence. Seeing that physical proof of the fog's effect, not just vanishing into it, but being erased by it, is a cold, sickening confirmation of your worst fears. The sheer scale of the event is starting to sink in. You look around the square, estimating the number of people, then try to picture the areas you know are now swallowed by the fog. Miles and miles of London gone. The thought is mind-boggling, impossible to fully grasp. How many people were in those areas? Hundreds of thousands, millions. The usual bustling life of the city, the constant noise of traffic and commerce, the sheer volume of humanity, all silenced in huge swaths. It's like a giant has taken bites out of the city, and those bites are now filled with nothing but silent, unnatural white. You see people pointing towards the sky, towards areas that are still clear. The Parliament buildings, Big Ben, still visible in the distance, but with the fog creeping relentlessly towards them, a white tide against the iconic skyline. The dome of St. Paul's Cathedral stands proud, but you can see the fog advancing up Fleet Street, threatening to engulf it next. The scale of loss isn't just individual, it's architectural, historical, cultural. London itself is being erased. Someone tries to organize things. A man with a loud voice, perhaps a former soldier or a local politician, climbs onto an overturned cart. He tries to shout instructions to tell people to stay calm, to move towards a particular direction, presumably one they hope is safe. But his words are lost in the general din of panic and grief. Nobody is listening. The usual social order has disintegrated, replaced by primal fear and the desperate need to survive. It's amazing how quickly a bowler-hatted gentleman can lose his composure when faced with an opaque wall that makes you disappear. You notice small details in the wreckage around you. A child's shoe lying abandoned. A spilled basket of apples now bruised and rolling across the cobblestones. A gentleman's walking stick snapped in half. These mundane objects, remnants of lives abruptly interrupted, are somehow more poignant than the grander scale of the destruction. They speak of ordinary moments, shattered, of routines obliterated without warning. It's like the world suddenly paused, and everything that wasn't fast enough to get out of the way was simply deleted. The silence from the fog-consumed areas is deafening in its own way. It's not just the absence of city noise, it's the absence of any sound. No distant dogs barking, no wind whistling around buildings, no trains rumbling underground. It's an active, enforced silence that feels fundamentally wrong, an unnatural stillness that violates the very essence of a living city. You remember how London is never truly quiet even at night. There's always a distant hum, a clatter, a cry. But now there are vast areas where there is nothing. You see a group of women clinging to each other, openly sobbing. One keeps repeating, "He just went to get the milk." The milk. Her husband presumably caught by the fog on a simple errand. The mundane absurdity of it is horrifying. People weren't doing anything extraordinary. They were just living their lives, going to work, buying groceries, walking the dog, when they were simply wiped away. It makes your own survival feel like a random, terrifying lottery win. It's a bit like leaving your house for a quick trip to the corner shop, only to find the shop, the corner, and half your street have decided to take an impromptu, silent vacation to, well, nobody knows where. You definitely wouldn't survive that grocery run. A rumor starts circulating. Maybe it's higher ground that's safe, or perhaps the river, though you saw the fog consuming the Thames earlier. Or maybe brick buildings offer some protection. People start frantically trying doors, looking for shelter, a place where this unnatural white cannot follow. You consider seeking refuge inside, but the thought of being trapped within walls if the fog does manage to penetrate is terrifying. Outdoors, at least you can see it coming. You can run. For now, the open square feels like the lesser of two evils. You feel a wave of exhaustion wash over you now that the immediate adrenaline rush has subsided. Your muscles ache, your throat is dry, and the metallic taste of the fog, even just the lingering scent, is foul. You desperately want a drink of water, a moment of peace, but there is none. The air is electric with fear and uncertainty. Every shadow seems to twist. Every distant sound from the still clear areas is magnified, interpreted as a new threat. You spot a discarded newspaper, its headline already obsolete. Parliament debates new housing bill. The ordinariness of the headline is a stark contrast to the extraordinary reality. Debates about housing bills seem laughably irrelevant now. The sheer suddenness of it all is what makes it so hard to process. One moment life was normal with its usual worries and routines. The next, vast swathes of the city and the people in them were simply gone. No warning, no chance to prepare. You recall hearing about the meticulous records London kept. Birth certificates, census data, property deeds. Think of the bureaucratic nightmare this event is creating, not just the human tragedy. Forget finding a missing button on your favorite coat. Try finding a missing million people in several square miles of buildings. The paperwork alone would be enough to make a hardened clerk weep into his ledger. You can almost picture the frantic, useless attempts to reconcile records that no longer correspond to physical reality. Someone points towards a hill in the distance, suggesting it might be high enough to be safe. A new wave of movement ripples through the crowd as people start heading in that direction, a desperate exodus towards a perceived haven. You consider joining them. It's a gamble like everything else now. Is the fog bound by altitude? Does it respect terrain? Or is it an unstoppable force that will simply roll over hills and valleys alike? You don't know. Nobody knows. But doing something, moving towards somewhere, feels better than standing still, waiting for the white wall to inevitably reach you. You see a lone policeman, his uniform disheveled, sitting on a bench, his head in his hands. His whistle lies forgotten on the ground beside him. The symbol of law and order completely broken by the incomprehensible event. He's not directing traffic, not calming crowds, not investigating. He's just another shell-shocked survivor, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the disaster. It's a powerful image of how utterly unprepared the city and its institutions were for this. You think about the sheer number of stories that have just ended without conclusion. Conversations, unfinished plans, unexecuted relationships severed in an instant. The collective human experience contained within those consumed areas simply gone. It's not just buildings and objects. It's the intangible web of connections and histories that make up a city. This makes losing your phone and all your contacts feel like misplacing a single sock. The scale of lost data, of lost memories, is unimaginable. As you start to move with the flow of people heading towards the distant hill, you glance back at the edge of the fog. It seems to have advanced slightly since you arrived a fraction of an inch closer to the square. It's slow, relentless, silent, like a predator patiently stalking its prey, giving it just enough time to realize its fate before consuming it. The metallic, earthy smell is still in the air, a constant reminder of the presence of this alien entity. You join the slow, shuffling march towards the hill. The path is littered with abandoned belongings, suitcases, prams, shopping bags, dropped by people fleeing for their lives. The air is filled with a low murmur of fear and uncertainty, punctuated by sudden cries and the sound of weeping. There's no conversation, just shared terror. You walk alongside strangers, bound together only by the fact that you all happen to be in the right place or the wrong place, just not the wrong place when the fog rolled in. A chilling thought surfaces, is this fog permanent or will it dissipate, revealing what empty spaces, a new landscape, or nothing at all? The uncertainty about the nature of the fog and what happens to its victims is a heavy weight. Are the vanished people simply removed from existence, or are they trapped somewhere perhaps within the white itself? The terrifying silence from inside suggests the former, but your mind rebels against the idea of such complete erasure. This whole situation makes the time you lost your keys feel like a relaxing afternoon picnic. At least with keys, you know they exist somewhere, probably just under the sofa cushions. This is a different level of missing, a level that suggests the sofa cushions themselves might have decided to take a vacation. You try to focus on the immediate task, putting distance between yourself and that silent, advancing wall of white. The hill in the distance seems incredibly far away, but it's the only destination that offers even a glimmer of hope. You walk with the crowd, part of a silent, desperate migration, leaving behind a city that is rapidly disappearing, piece by piece, into an inexplicable, silent void. The weight of the silence, the metallic cold, and the sheer horrifying scale of the loss press down on you with every step. You are a survivor for now in a world that has fundamentally and terrifyingly changed. You are part of the stream now, a small tributary joining a swelling river of frightened souls moving away from the advancing tide of silence. The air hangs heavy and still carrying the collective scent of fear, sharp and coppery, mingled with the ever-present metallic tang of the fog itself. Every few steps, someone stumbles, someone cries out, someone collapses, unable to continue. You see others pause briefly to help or simply step around them, the instinct for self-preservation overriding compassion in the face of such overwhelming, incomprehensible danger. The hill looms ahead, a dark smudge against the bruised sky, offering a faint promise of safety simply because it's up, away from the flat, low-lying areas already swallowed. It feels like an eternity to reach it each step and effort as your legs protest the sudden, desperate exertion after the shock. The rhythm of the crowd is a ragged shuffle punctuated by ragged breathing and the distant, terrifying memory of that absolute, consuming silence you left behind. As you gain even a slight bit of elevation, turning to look back, the scale of the disaster becomes horrifyingly clear. The city, so recently a vibrant, thrumming entity of brick and steel and noise, is now being systematically erased. The white wall of fog stretches in an impossibly straight line across the landscape, a stark division between what was and what no longer is. It doesn't follow the contours of the land precisely. It seems to glide over obstacles, absorbing everything it touches with that same eerie, absolute silence. You can see where familiar landmarks stood, now just the featureless, brilliant white where they should be. It's like someone spilled a colossal tin of white paint over the city, only the paint isn't paint, and it makes everything vanish. From this vantage point, you can see multiple streams of people converging from different directions, all heading towards whatever patches of higher ground or open country remain visible. They look like ants, tiny, desperate figures scrambling away from a slow-moving, invisible predator. The sheer number of people displace the thought of the even greater number lost. It's a weight that settles in your chest, heavy and cold. London is bleeding white. You notice something unsettling about the fog's edge from up here. It doesn't flow like natural fog. It expands. It feels more like a growth, a silent consumption than a weather phenomenon. There are no tendrils or wisps breaking away. It's a solid, defined boundary, like a cut through reality. And the silence within it, it's not just the absence of noise. It feels like an active negation of sound, a void that absorbs everything, even the memory of noise. It's the most terrifying silence you've ever encountered, far worse than any scream could be. People around you are starting to talk again, quiet, fearful whispers. Theories abound once more, but they're less frantic now, more resigned. The ground opened up, someone murmurs. Plague, another says, though this doesn't look like any plague. A judgment, a woman weeps softly. You hear snippets about the potential origin. Was it something unearthed during construction? A forgotten experiment beneath a government building? Historians still argue whether the lack of any discernible cause or pattern was the most psychologically damaging aspect for survivors, making logical coping mechanisms impossible. Without a visible enemy, a reason or a way to fight back the helplessness is absolute. You keep walking the incline, getting steeper now. Your lungs burn and the metallic taste of the fog seems to cling to the back of your throat, even though you're supposedly clear of it. It feels like an invisible residue, a reminder that you've brushed against something fundamentally wrong. The air, though clearer, doesn't feel clean. It feels watchful. Every rustle of leaves, every bird cry from the still living world is jarring against the backdrop of that massive, encroaching stillness. You pass abandoned vehicles on the road leading up the hill, a horse-drawn cart overturned, spilling its contents. A motor car, its occupants likely having fled on foot. The signs of sudden chaotic flight are everywhere. A child's doll lies face down in the mud. A top hat rests incongruously on a fence post. These small personal artifacts amplify the human cost, each one representing a story brutally cut short. It's the kind of thing that makes you appreciate mundane historical records like detailed parish registers, because you suddenly understand how quickly and completely human presence can be erased. You think of the painstaking work done by genealogists piecing together lives from scraps of paper. Now whole generations might have vanished simultaneously. Reaching a slightly flatter section of the hill, people pause, turning to look back. The view is heartbreaking. The white wall has advanced further, a silent, inexorable tide. It has reached the Parliament buildings now. You watch mesmerized and horrified as the iconic clock tower of Big Ben is slowly consumed, the familiar outline dissolving into the featureless white. There is no sound of collapse, no dust, no drama, just silent erasure. One moment it's there, the next, it's part of the silent void. It's utterly surreal, like watching a drawing being rubbed out with an eraser, but the drawing is real and it contains millions of lives. Well, that's one way to deal with parliamentary debates you don't agree with, I suppose, though a bit extreme even by political standards. The silence left behind the fog is what truly unnerves you. Cities are defined by their sounds. The rumble of trains, the clang of trams, the endless murmur of voices, the distant sirens, the church bells. London had a unique sonic fingerprint, a constant, vibrant hum. Now in the places the fog has touched, there is nothing. It feels wrong, profoundly unnatural, like a fundamental law of the universe has been broken. It makes your ears ache with the pressure of the void. You try to make sense of it. Is the fog some kind of solvent, a dimensional anomaly, an extraterrestrial entity? The lack of any scientific explanation is terrifying. London in this era was a hub of scientific advancement, engineering marvels. Think of the sewers being built, the underground railways, the advancements in medicine. All that accumulated knowledge and ingenuity, useless against a silent white wall that makes things simply cease to be. It really puts a dampener on your plans for building the world's first flying machine when the ground and everything on it might just decide to disappear. You see a group of people huddled around a small portable gramophone trying to play music. The scratchy tune feels incredibly poignant, a tiny pocket of human sound against the overwhelming silence pressing in from the city. It's a desperate attempt to cling to normalcy, to fill the void with something familiar and human. But the music sounds thin and fragile, easily swallowed by the vast, silent emptiness that has opened up. You spot an elderly couple holding hands, just sitting on the hillside, not walking further. They are watching the fog advance, their faces resigned, not panicked. Perhaps they are too old to flee, or perhaps they have simply lost too much to care anymore. Their stillness is a stark contrast to the frantic energy of the fleeing crowd. It's a quiet, heartbreaking image of surrender in the face of the inevitable. It makes you wonder about your own capacity to keep running, to keep fighting, if this silent tide truly is unstoppable. You find a relatively clear spot to sit down for a moment, needing to rest your aching legs. The ground feels solid beneath you, a small comfort. From here you can see the edge of the fog maybe half a mile away, still advancing, though perhaps slower now that it's encountered the slight incline of the hill. Or maybe that's just wishful thinking. The metallic smell seems less intense up here, but it's still present, a subtle, sickly sweet undercurrent to the damp earth in distant city smells. You notice the silence of the living world too. Fewer birds seem to be singing. The usual buzz of insects is absent. It's as if the natural world is also holding its breath, sensing that something is terribly wrong. Even the wind, when it blows, seems to carry a strange, flat quality, unable to rustle the leaves with its usual cheerfulness. It feels muted, subdued, as if afraid of making too much noise. Remember that feeling in Section 3, seeing the man lose his arm, the sheer impossibility of it? That image is burned into your mind, the clean, silent removal. It suggests a process that isn't violent in the way you understand violence. It's not destruction, but deletion. And the total absence of any remains, no blood, no debris, nothing, is perhaps the most chilling aspect. What happens to the matter? Where does it go? It's a bit like hitting delete on a computer file, but the file is a person and the computer is reality itself. And there's no recycle bin to check. You think about the city's vast infrastructure, the millions of miles of pipes, wires, and tunnels running beneath the streets, the intricate network of the Underground Railway carrying thousands upon thousands of people at any given moment. What happened when the fog encountered these? Were the tunnels simply erased people and all? Or did the fog penetrate underground? The thought of being trapped underground with the fog descending is a new layer of terror. Makes that time the tube line had signal failures for an hour feel like a tropical holiday. At least with signal failures, you knew the train was still there, just annoyingly stationary. There's a growing sense of isolation even within the crowd. Everyone is lost in their own fear, their own grief. The shared experience is one of panic and flight, but the internal processing is solitary. You are surrounded by people, but you feel profoundly alone, a tiny speck, in a world that is fundamentally broken. The comfort of familiar faces, familiar places is gone for so many. You wonder if you've lost anyone yourself. Friends, acquaintances, people you saw every day in the streets or shops. The scale is too vast to comprehend the individual tragedies. A different sound reaches you now, carried on the faint breeze from the areas. Still clear, distant sirens growing closer. Emergency services are trying to respond. Police whistles, fire engine bells, the clatter of horse-drawn ambulances. It's the sound of organized chaos of institutions attempting to function in the face of the impossible. But what can a fireman do against a silent wall that makes everything vanish? What can a policeman investigate when the crime scene simply ceases to exist? It feels futile, heartbreakingly, so like bringing a teacup to fight a tsunami. You see a few figures moving towards the fog, not away from it. Perhaps they are rescuers, or maybe people searching for loved ones unable to accept their loss. Or perhaps in their despair, they are simply walking towards the inevitable, choosing their end rather than waiting for it. It's a somber, disturbing sight. You instinctively shrink back the fear of that silent white wall, overriding any impulse towards heroism or search. Looking down towards the fog, you notice small objects seem to vanish slightly before the main wall reaches them. A lamppost, a mailbox. They flicker out of existence a split second before the white arrives. It's almost imperceptible, a glitch in reality. This isn't just a physical barrier. It's affecting things at a more fundamental level. It's like the world's worst magic trick where the magician says, "And for my next trick, I will make this entire city disappear." And then actually does it without so much as a puff of smoke or a dramatic flourish. People on the hill are starting to huddle together for warmth and comfort as the sun begins to dip lower in the sky, painting the still clear parts of the city in hues of orange and purple, a beautiful, cruel contrast to the stark white consuming it. The wind picks up slightly, carrying a chill that has nothing to do with the temperature and everything to do with the emptiness below. You pull your coat tighter, but the cold feels like it's coming from the inside. The conversations around you turn to practical matters, whispered plans for survival. Where can we go? Is there food, water, shelter? The immediate threat of being consumed by the fog is momentarily replaced by the more mundane, yet equally pressing concerns of survival in a world turned upside down. The social fabric so recently ripped apart by panic is starting to fray into smaller, fearful knots of mutual dependence. You realize that history as you knew it has just taken a sharp, unimaginable turn. This isn't just a major event, it's an event that redefines what is possible, what is real. Future historians, if there are any, will struggle to categorize this. A natural disaster, an act of war, something else entirely. Historians still argue whether classifying the Great Fog as a natural disaster is accurate given its unnatural properties and the sheer lack of precedent. It doesn't fit neatly into any box. As twilight deepens, the edge of the fog begins to emit a faint internal luminescence, a soft, cold white light that seems to glow from within. It's not reflective, it's emitting light. This adds another layer of unnerving strangeness to the phenomenon. The silent wall is now a glowing wall, a beacon of impossible negation in the gathering gloom. It makes it easier to track its slow, relentless advance. You think about the archives, the museums, the libraries, repositories of centuries of human knowledge and creativity. So many of them are now gone, swallowed by the white. The collective memory of the city of the nation has suffered an irreparable blow. Future generations might only know of this era through fragmented accounts, like trying to piece together a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing, and the pieces themselves are starting to vanish as you look at them. A man near you is carefully drawing in a small notebook, sketching the advancing fog line, the ruined skyline, the figures fleeing. Perhaps he is an artist trying to capture this moment, or perhaps he feels compelled to document it, to create a record before everything is erased. His focus is intense, a small act of defiance against the chaos and meaninglessness. You admire his ability to find a purpose amidst the horror. You shift uncomfortably, the ground hard beneath you. Sleep is a distant, impossible dream. Your mind races, replaying the terrifying images of the day, trying to find a pattern, a reason, anything that makes sense. But there is none. Only the silent, glowing, impossible white consuming the city you knew, piece by agonizing piece. The metallic smell is still there, a phantom taste, a constant reminder. This feels less like a historical event and more like reality buffering endlessly and then crashing without saving. You half expect a giant Error 404 city not found message to appear in the sky, but there's no error message, just the quiet, terrifying hum of absence. The air grows colder. The stars begin to appear in the still clear sky above, indifferent to the catastrophe unfolding below. You look up at them, searching for some sign, some explanation, but they just twinkle silently back. You are alone on a hillside with strangers watching your world disappear, and the night is just beginning. The long vigil waiting to see if the silent tide reaches this far has begun, and the silence from the void below feels like it's growing louder, a pressure building against the fragile bubble of reality you currently inhabit. The beautiful, cruel contrast of the sunset fades, replaced by the deep indigo of a night sky, struggling against the unnatural luminescence below. The air bites with a chill that is more than just the temperature dropping. It feels like the warmth of the city itself is being drained away, absorbed into that terrible white void. The faint glow you noticed as twilight fell has intensified. The edge of the fog is now a distinct luminous wall against the darkness. Not bright, but a soft, steady white light that seems to come from within. It outlines the devoured city, a silent, glowing scar on the landscape. You shiver, pulling your coat tighter around you, wishing you'd grab that extra blanket, that thermos of tea, anything. But there wasn't time. There was only the primal urge to run, to get away from the silence, the vanishing. Around you, the huddled figures on the hillside become darker shapes against the faint glow. Whispers rise and fall like hesitant waves. Questions, fears, fragments of sentences left unfinished. Did you see my brother? Where do we go? The silence from the city isn't just the absence of noise. It's a presence of vast, empty space that seems to press in on your ears. You strain to hear something, anything, from within that glowing expanse. A distant siren, a dog barking, even the rumble of a collapsing building. But there is nothing. The silence is absolute, a perfect vacuum of sound. It feels heavy, suffocating, like being underwater in the dead of night. People try to settle to find a relatively smooth spot on the uneven ground. Some have managed to bring blankets or coats, sharing them sparingly. Families huddle together, the children mostly quiet, now sensing the profound wrongness of the situation. The frantic energy of the flight has given way to a weary, fearful stillness. The adrenaline that propelled you up the hill is draining away, leaving you with aching muscles and a hollow pit of dread in your stomach. Looking out over the city outlined by the glowing fog is like watching a perverse nativity scene. Only instead of life appearing, it's life being erased. The luminous line creeps forward slow but relentless. You can no longer make out individual buildings being consumed. It's just the continuous, silent expansion of the white. It's mesmerizing in its horror, utterly unlike any fire flood or earthquake you could imagine. Those disasters, for all their terror, leave wreckage, leave traces. This leaves nothing. It's like watching a particularly aggressive screensaver, but it's eating reality instead of just pretty patterns. The air carries the metallic scent fainter up here, but still present a reminder that you are not truly safe from whatever this is. It feels like a contamination, a subtle poison in the air you breathe. You find yourself taking shallow breaths, as if that might somehow protect you. The ground beneath you feels solid, comforting, but you remember seeing objects vanish slightly before the fog edge reached them. What if the ground itself isn't safe? What if this hill is just a temporary reprieve? Someone lights a small fire, a tentative flicker of warmth and light against the overwhelming darkness and cold. Others slowly gravitate towards it, drawn by the primal need for community and comfort. The fire casts flickering shadows, turning ordinary faces into strained, fearful masks. People speak in hushed tones, sharing what little information they have, which is mostly rumor and speculation. They say it started near the docks. No, I heard it was a laboratory explosion under Whitehall. It's the end times, I tell you. You hear snippets about the attempts to stop it earlier in the day. Reports of police trying to hold back crowds only for the police themselves to vanish. Fire brigades rushing towards the fog, their engines and crews simply ceasing to be. Soldiers being deployed, disappearing just the same. It's almost darkly humorous, like bringing a strongly worded letter to a fight with a black hole. No amount of manpower, no amount of technology could stand against it. One rumor circulates that the fog is selective, that it only takes certain people. Only the wicked, one person mutters, looking fearfully at their neighbors. No, only the healthy, someone else argues, convinced it's a strange new disease. The lack of pattern, the randomness with which it struck, a man's arm vanishing, a whole street disappearing, feeds the most bizarre and terrifying theories. Historians still argue whether the pervasive, unfounded rumor-mongering in the initial hours was a natural coping mechanism or actively hindered organized survival efforts. Without facts, the human mind fills the void with its worst fears. You try to remember what London was like just this morning. The bustling streets, the familiar sounds, the sense of permanence. It feels like a lifetime ago, a dream you might never return to. The sheer scale of the loss is unfathomable. Millions of people, an entire city, gone. Just gone. You think of the vibrant lifeblood of London in the early 20th century, the endless flow of goods and people, the political heart of an empire, the cultural hub, all swallowed by silence and white light. Remember the detail about the city's gas lamps. London at night was a network of glowing gas lights, a comforting, albeit sometimes eerie illumination. Now that network is gone, replaced by the single terrifying glow of the fog's edge. Imagine trying to navigate by the light of a giant silent eraser, not exactly listed in the Royal Geographical Society's guidebooks. The conversations around the fire turn to survival. What happens tomorrow? Where will food come from? Shelter? The future, always a certainty in its unfolding moments, has become a vast, terrifying question mark. You are a refugee in your own country, displaced not by war or natural disaster, as the world understood them, but by something utterly alien. The established order has dissolved not with a bang, but with a silent, glowing fade. You see a man meticulously sharpening a small knife with a stone. He doesn't look threatening, just focused, preparing for an unknown future, where such skills might suddenly be vital. Others are trying to organize patrols, assigning people to watch the advancing fog line. It's a return to a more basic tribal form of organization, small groups banding together for mutual protection. The quirky tidbit you pick up is a story whispered near the fire. Someone swears they saw a creature half-formed and shimmering inside the fog just before it reached their street. Another claims the fog responds to thoughts drawing people in who are weak or afraid. These are the fringe theories born of desperation and a need to find a tangible enemy or explanation. They sound like folklore, like ancient myths, but in the face of the impossible, they gain a terrifying credibility. You watch the glowing edge. It seems to have slowed its advance slightly, perhaps because of the incline, or perhaps its nature has changed with the arrival of night. Or maybe it's just your tired eyes playing tricks. But it is still moving. The faint light is hypnotic, drawing your gaze even as it fills you with dread. It illuminates the lower slopes of the hill, making the trees and bushes look stark and unnatural against the white backdrop. The cold continues to seep in. Your feet are numb, your hands are stiff. Sleep is still impossible, the mind too alert, too afraid. Every rustle of leaves, every distant snap of a twig makes you jump. Your senses are heightened, scanning for danger, but the danger is unlike anything you can fight or flee in the traditional sense. It's a slow, silent tide of non-existence. Think about the normal sounds of London at night. The distant chime of Big Ben marking the hours. Gone, swallowed by the silence. The late-night traffic vanished. The last calls of street vendors silenced. The city that never truly slept has been put to sleep permanently and without a sound. It's the ultimate quiet zone, though I wouldn't recommend trying to get a good night's sleep in it. The air here on the hill feels thin exposed. You miss the solidity of walls, the roof over your head. You are utterly vulnerable under the indifferent gaze of the stars. And below the city glows a memorial to its own erasure. It feels wrong, fundamentally wrong, for a city of millions to be reduced to this, a silent, glowing void. Some people are praying, their voices low and fervent. Others sit in stunned silence, their faces blank with shock. Grief hasn't fully set in yet, not in the traditional sense. How do you grieve something that has simply ceased to be? It's not death. It's something else, something harder to comprehend, harder to process. It's nullification. The mainstream historical fact you ponder tonight is the structure of London's gas lamp network. By the early 20th century, thousands upon thousands of gas lamps illuminated the city streets, a significant piece of infrastructure and a symbol of urban modernity and safety after dark. To think of that intricate network painstakingly built over decades simply vanishing, it's another layer of the impossible scale of this event. The glowing fog is not merely replacing the gaslight, it's replacing the space the gaslight occupied. You shift your position, trying to find a more comfortable spot, but the ground is hard and unforgiving. The cold is becoming a problem. People are trying to share body warmth, huddling closer together around the small fire. Resourcefulness born of desperation is starting to surface. Someone found a discarded tarp. They're using it to create a makeshift windbreak. Small acts of cooperation emerge from the chaos, tiny sparks of humanity against the overwhelming darkness and fear. The glowing fog continues its slow, silent encroachment. It reaches the foot of the hill, now a white wall lapping at the base of the slope. It doesn't climb immediately, but the light intensifies, slightly reflecting off the trees nearest the edge. The metallic smell strengthens again, a sickeningly sweet perfume of absence. The air feels thick, viscous near the edge. You feel a wave of fatigue wash over you, heavy and overwhelming. Your eyes burn from staring at the glowing fog, your body aches from the frantic flight in the cold ground. But sleep is a luxury you can't afford. Not yet. Not while the glowing white wall sits at the foot of the hill, a silent promise of erasure. You have to stay awake, stay watchful. The night is long, stretching out endlessly. The glowing fog is the only clock, its slow, relentless advance, the only measure of time. There are no church bells to mark the hours. No train whistles in the distance. Just the whispers of the wind, the crackle of the small fire, and the vast oppressive silence from below. Well, at least you can't complain about noisy neighbors keeping you awake. They're all elsewhere. You wrap your arms around yourself, trying to conserve warmth. The person next to you, a stranger, shifts closer, seeking mutual heat. It's an unspoken acknowledgement of shared vulnerability. In the face of something this enormous, the petty divisions and concerns of everyday life simply dissolve. All that matters is survival and the fragile hope of a morning that might not dawn on a world completely consumed. The historians still argue element for this section could be about the psychological impact of the glowing fog itself. Whether its luminescence added a distinct layer of terror beyond the simple vanishing, making it seem almost supernatural or malevolent. It certainly feels that way sitting here watching it. It doesn't feel like a natural phenomenon. It feels like an active, conscious thing pushing forward, consuming everything in its path. The quirky tidbit could also tie into superstitions about lights, perhaps some old folklore about spectral lights or will-o'-the-wisps, twisted into something horrific in this modern context. People around the fire whisper about old legends, trying to find a framework, any framework to understand what is happening. Is it related to the old Roman ruins? A curse unearthed from the Black Death burial pits? Anything is possible when the impossible is happening before your eyes. You close your eyes for a moment, trying to rest them, but the image of the glowing white wall is burned onto your eyelids. When you open them again, it's still there, a silent sentinel at the edge of the darkness. The fear is a physical weight in your chest, making it hard to breathe deeply. This is the first night of the rest of your life, and it is terrifyingly, profoundly silent. The long night wears on, stretching thin like old parchment. The small fire provides scant warmth against the penetrating cold, and you find yourself huddled closer to strangers, sharing the meager heat. The sky above is starting to lighten, a slow, reluctant change from deep indigo to a bruised pale gray. Dawn, such as it is arriving. Looking out over the city, the glowing fog edge seems to shimmer slightly in the nascent light. It's still there, solid and silent, a luminous tide mark at the base of the hill. The metallic scent is fainter now, perhaps dispersed by the night air, but it's a smell you know you'll never forget. It's the perfume of oblivion. Sleep is still a distant, impossible concept. Your body aches from the cold ground, your eyes burn from lack of rest, and from staring at the terrifying white glow. But your mind is hyper-alert, keyed up by fear and the profound strangeness of the situation. Every rustle of leaves, every creak of a branch in the thin breeze sends a jolt of adrenaline through you. As the gray light strengthens, outlining the trees and the huddled figures on the hill, something changes. The absolute silence from the city begins to crack. It's not a sudden burst of noise, nothing so reassuring as a distant engine or a call for help. No, it's much, much worse. You hear it first as a faint, almost imperceptible hum. It's low, vibrating more in your bones than your ears. It builds slowly like the distant thrumming of enormous machinery, but wrong. It has no rhythm, no discernible source point. It just is a low, resonant vibration that seems to emanate from the entire devoured area. The people around you shift their heads, cocked, listening. Whispers spread again, this time of confusion and renewed fear. What is that? Do you hear it? The sound is not loud, but it's deeply unsettling, alien. It feels like the city isn't empty and silent anymore. It's simply processing, digesting. Then layered over the hum come other sounds. Faint, distorted echoes of things that should no longer exist. A chime, but elongated and off-key like a warped bell tower. A scraping sound, vast and slow, as if giant invisible claws are being dragged across pavements miles away. It sounds like the world's largest and least talented orchestra practicing for a concert they'll never get to play. You strain your ears trying to identify anything familiar, anything that makes sense. But these sounds defy logic. They are the ghosts of noise echoes of a vanished reality played back through a filter of sheer wrongness. It's deeply unnerving, like hearing whispers in an empty house, except the house is a city of millions that just disappeared. The consensus among the huddled survivors is one of confused terror. Is this the fog itself making noise? Is it some residue of what was consumed? Historians still argue whether these initial sounds were genuine acoustic phenomena generated by the fog's interaction with the environment, or primarily psychological auditory hallucinations triggered by the survivors' extreme stress and trauma. Were you all hearing the same thing, or were your minds cracking under the strain? You listen intently. Now you can hear something that almost sounds like distant voices, but they are stretched, distorted like audio played back at the wrong speed. They rise and fall, a terrible, inhuman chorus from the white void. It's the most chilling sound yet, because it hints at the people who were taken, but twisted into something utterly alien. A woman near you begins to sob quietly, burying her face in her hands. A man curses under his breath, a string of futile, angry words directed at the glowing fog. The small fire seems even more fragile now, its cheerful crackle inadequate against the vast, unsettling soundscape emerging from the valley below. The air remains cold, biting, but the sound adds another layer of discomfort, a prickling fear on your skin that isn't from the temperature. It feels like being watched, listened to, from the impenetrable whiteness. The silence was terrifying, yes, but this This is actively malevolent. It suggests that whatever the fog is, it is still here, still active, and possibly aware. Remember the detail about London's historical soundscape? Before cars dominated the city was filled with a symphony of horse hooves, carriage wheels, street vendors' cries, church bells, factory whistles, the rumble of the underground trains. It was a cacophony, certainly, but a vibrant human one. Now that complex soundscape is gone, replaced by this minimalist horror of hum scrapes and distorted whispers. It's the anti-London soundscape, a void that echoes with the mockery of life. One of the quirky tidbits circulating, whispered urgently around the fire, is that the sounds are the trapped souls of those taken by the fog, crying out in some purgatorial state. Another is that they are signals, a form of communication from the entity or phenomenon that created the fog, attempting to lure others in. These are the fringe theories, wild and desperate attempts to apply supernatural or science fiction explanations to something that defies all known reality. They add another layer of gothic horror to the already terrifying situation. Honestly, if this is purgatory, the acoustics department really needs a complete overhaul. Now recurring, the sounds seem to fluctuate, sometimes fading, sometimes intensifying. The hum is constant, a bedrock of unease, but the other noises, the scraping, the warped chimes, the distorted voices, pulse and shift. It's like listening to a malfunctioning radio tuned to a station from hell. You consider the mainstream historical fact about London's famous pea-soup fogs. These dense, often toxic fogs were a regular, if unwelcome, part of London life, particularly in the industrial era. They caused chaos, accidents, and health problems, but they were understood. They were weather. This fog is not weather. It's clean, silent, mostly glowing, and it takes things. The historical fogs were a nuisance. This is an existential horror. The contrast makes the current situation even more stark. You feel a strange urge, fleeting but powerful, to go towards the sounds, to investigate, to understand. It's a dangerous curiosity, the human need to make sense of the unknown, even when the unknown is actively erasing reality. You quickly suppress it. The people who went towards the fog yesterday didn't come back. The gray light of dawn continues its slow ascent. It reveals the full extent of the huddled mass of people on the hillside. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, who managed to flee in time. Their faces are etched with exhaustion and terror, their eyes fixed on the glowing white below. The sounds from the fog fill the quiet morning air, a constant, awful reminder of what was lost and what still threatens. The cold remains relentless. You try stamping your feet, rubbing your hands together, anything to generate some warmth. The small fire is dwindling and people are looking around, wondering if there is anything flammable nearby they could use. Resourcefulness is giving way to basic survival needs. Food, water, shelter. These are becoming urgent concerns, but they are overshadowed by the immediate psychological assault of the sounds from the void. One of the three required light jokes for this section surfaces in your mind, maybe out of sheer fatigue or a desperate attempt at normalcy. You think, well, at least the soundproofing in the city seems to have been excellent before this happened. Now, not so much. Maybe it's just a massive echo chamber now. Anyone fancy a sing-along? You quickly dismiss the thought. It feels wildly inappropriate even to yourself. The sounds intensify slightly as the light increases. The scraping becomes more distinct, a vast tearing sound that makes you wince. The distorted voices rise in pitch, becoming a cacophony of high-pitched, inhuman wails that claw at your nerves. It feels like the fog is waking up, becoming more active with the dawn. Or perhaps the change in light somehow affects its acoustic properties. The debate phrase comes to mind again. Historians will undoubtedly argue over the veracity and nature of the sounds reported by survivors. Were they a shared hallucination, a psychological phenomenon, or was the fog emitting actual sound, perhaps as a byproduct of its function, or even intentionally? Without access to the devoured area, without scientific instruments, there's only the testimony of the terrified survivors. You look around at the faces illuminated by the gray light. Some are weeping silently. Others are rigid with fear, staring blankly ahead. A few are trying to comfort their children, murmuring reassurances that ring hollow in the face of the terrible sounds. The community that formed out of shared flight is now bound by shared fear and a growing sense of helplessness. The quirkier tidbit about sounds luring people feels particularly potent now. Are these sounds meant to draw you in? Are they a siren song of oblivion? The warped voices from the fog seem to call out not with words you can understand, but with an unsettling resonance that tugs at something deep inside you. It takes a conscious effort to resist the morbid fascination, the desire to move closer to finally understand. You remember the absolute profound silence of the night. That silence felt like a pause, a holding of breath. These sounds feel like the exhale, the slow, terrible manifestation of whatever the fog truly is. It's no longer just a physical threat, it's a sensory and psychological one too. As the gray light turns to a pale yellow, the first hint of sunrise over the horizon, you can't see the sounds from the fog seem to reach a crescendo. The hum vibrates intensely, the scraping is a grating horror, and the distorted voices are a frantic wailing chorus. It's overwhelming, a sonic assault that feels like it's trying to strip away your sanity. You clamp your hands over your ears, but the sounds seem to penetrate your skull. The hum is in your bones, the voices are in your mind. It feels like the fog is inside your head whispering terrible, nonsensical things. Then as quickly as they intensify, the sounds begin to subside. The wails fade, the scraping softens, the hum recedes back to that faint, low vibration. By the time the sun actually crests the horizon, casting pale, weak light across the devastated landscape, the sounds are back to their earlier, unsettling level. Still present, still horrifying, but no longer a deafening assault. The sudden relative quiet leaves you breathless, trembling. You slowly lower your hands, listening. The hum is still there, the occasional scrape or warped chime. But the worst of it has passed for now. It was a terrible welcome to the first dawn after London vanished. The mainstream historical fact about the sounds of London feels particularly poignant now. That vibrant, noisy city life reduced to this. It's not just buildings and people that have gone. The entire sensory experience of a major metropolis has been annihilated and replaced by this dreadful new soundscape. It's the ultimate sound bath, but it washes away your soul instead of your stress. You shiver not just from the cold, but from the memory of those sounds. It felt like the fog was communicating, or perhaps just expressing its awful existence. The day is here, but the horror has only deepened. The glowing white wall remains, and now you know it's not silent. It speaks in the language of nightmares. The sun, a weak disk of pale orange, finally lifts above the distant, unseen horizon. Its light, thin and cold, slowly spreads across the landscape. The shadows of the trees lengthen and shrink, and the huddled forms on the hillside gain definition. You can see the dirt on faces, the rips in clothing, the sheer exhaustion etched onto every features. The terrifying sonic assault of the dawn has subsided, leaving behind only the faint, lingering hum and the memory of distorted screams. The relative quiet is a fragile gift, but it doesn't bring comfort. It brings clarity. In the full light of day, the fog looks different. It's no longer a glowing entity in the dark, but a solid, unnaturally bright white wall stretching across the valley below. It reaches upwards higher than any natural fog you've ever seen, obscuring the bottom halves of buildings on the hills across the way. It has a hard-to-find edge, not wispy like normal mist, but sharp and absolute, like a line drawn with luminous paint. The color is a brilliant, opaque white, completely impenetrable to the eye. It's like a cosmic plaster cast has been poured over the city. There's no movement in the fog, no swirling, no thinning, just this silent, blinding white mass. It looks utterly inert, yet you know it's not. The low hum still vibrates faintly in the air, a constant reminder of its active presence. And the memory of the sounds you heard just moments ago, the scraping, the warped voices, the wails, is burned into your mind. The fog is not just there, it is something. As the sun climbs higher, the air warms slightly, but the bone-deep chill from the night persists. People slowly begin to stir, uncurl themselves from cramped positions. There's a murmuring across the hillside, quieter now, less frantic than the night before. It's the sound of stunned disbelief and dawning dread. Okay, morning briefing time. Anyone see anything? No, great. Anyone got coffee? No, okay, this is worse than we thought. The scale of the disaster is starkly visible now. The city, all of it is gone, replaced by this white void. Millions of people simply vanished. The weight of that reality presses down on you, heavy and suffocating. It's not just buildings and streets. It's lives, histories, futures. Every single connection you had within that area severed in an instant. You look at the faces around you, strangers mostly, united only by the fact that you all ran in the same direction. There's a shared look of trauma, a wide-eyed, hollow expression that speaks volumes. Some people are still crying silently. Others are staring fixedly at the white wall as if trying to will it to disappear. A few are talking quietly amongst themselves, perhaps trying to piece together what happened, or maybe just finding solace in the sound of another human voice. The immediate reality of the situation starts to push through the psychological shock. You're cold, you're hungry, your throat is dry. The ground you slept on was hard and damp. You have no idea what happens next. Where do you go? What do you do? Survival instincts buried deep under layers of modern comfort and convenience begin to surface. People are looking around, assessing the environment. Are there any resources on this hillside? Any source of water? Any potential shelter? There's a small copse of trees higher up the slope. A few people start to walk towards it, perhaps hoping for a little protection from the elements, or maybe just needing a destination, any destination after a night of static terror. Others are looking back down the way they came towards the areas that weren't swallowed by the fog, but are now inaccessible. The sheer number of people is overwhelming. There must be thousands here scattered across the hillside. It's an instant community formed by catastrophe, but without any structure, any leadership, any plan. People are wandering aimlessly, sitting numbly, or clustering in small, self-formed groups. It's like the world's saddest, most unplanned flash mob. You notice a few individuals trying to take charge, calling out, trying to get people's attention. A woman with a loud voice is shouting about needing to find water. A man in what looks like ripped office clothes is trying to organize people into searching groups. These are the first tentative signs of attempted order in the chaos. How effective they will be remains to be seen. The mainstream historical fact about London that comes to mind is its historical resilience. Think about the Great Fire of 1666, which destroyed huge swathes of the city, or the Blitz during World War II, where bombing raids flattened entire neighborhoods night after night. London has been devastated before, and it has always rebuilt, always recovered. It was a city built on resilience, on bouncing back from disaster. But those disasters, as terrible as they were understandable. They were fire. They were bombs. This is different. This is not destruction. It is erasure. There is nothing to rebuild, no rubble to clear. Just a void. This event feels fundamentally different from anything in London's long, tough history. The immediate needs are becoming more urgent. The cold is biting, especially now that the adrenaline surge of the night is fading. Some people have blankets they grabbed, others are shivering in thin clothing. There's no readily apparent source of water on the hillside. Hunger is a dull ache in your stomach. Most people fled with nothing but the clothes on their back, maybe a phone or a wallet. A quirky or fringe tidbit that pops into your head is something you once heard about Victorian-era survival guides. Apparently, there was a whole genre of books offering advice on everything from building a makeshift shelter to finding edible plants in the urban environment just in case of a societal collapse or natural disaster. Who would have thought those might actually be useful? You chuckle humorlessly to yourself. Finding edible weeds on a golf course doesn't exactly stack up against a glowing wall of oblivion swallowing a city. If only I'd brought my copy of Urban Foraging for the modern gentleman facing existential annihilation. The open scholarly debate here is a massive one that will occupy historians, psychologists, and sociologists for generations, assuming there are generations to study it. Historians will debate extensively about the immediate psychological and social response of the survivors. Was there a critical window for effective organization before despair set in? Were the initial attempts at leadership successful in mitigating further loss of life or suffering? Or was the trauma so profound that large-scale cohesive action was impossible in the immediate aftermath? How did people cope with the sheer unimaginable scale of personal loss? Not knowing if family, friends, loved ones were simply gone. You see examples of both. Small clusters of people who clearly know each other are clinging together, offering what little comfort they can. Individuals are acting on their own initiative, exploring, trying to find solutions. And many, many more are simply sitting, staring, seemingly paralyzed by the enormity of what has happened. The air is thin and cool. The sun, while visible, offers little warmth at this early hour. The smell is mostly clean air and damp earth, a stark contrast to the metallic tang of last night. But underlying it is the lingering faint hum from the white void below. It's a constant reminder that the threat is not over. It's just waiting. You look down at your hands. They're dirty, scratched. Your clothes feel grimy and inadequate. You think about the simple things that are now completely unavailable. A hot shower, a cup of tea, a comfortable bed. These mundane comforts now feel like unimaginable luxuries. Someone near you is attempting to use their phone. They hold it up, turning it this way and that, looking for a signal. Others are doing the same. Most screens remain blank or show no service. The infrastructure of the city is gone, and presumably the mobile network towers along with it. A few people seem to get a faint signal, perhaps, from a tower further afield that wasn't consumed. Urgent, hushed conversations ensue, likely trying to reach family outside the affected area, or perhaps emergency services. This brings up another layer of horror. Communication is largely cut off. The world outside this hillside, outside this white void, has no idea what the full extent of the disaster is. Are the emergency services aware? Are they coming, or are they also gone? Maybe they're just stuck in traffic. A very, very permanent kind of traffic. The lack of information is a breeding ground for fear and speculation. Whispers are starting again wilder now in the daylight. The fog is a weapon. It's an alien invasion. It's divine judgment. It's a government experiment gone wrong. These fringe theories circulate, clinging to the desperate need for an explanation, any explanation, for something so utterly incomprehensible. One of the quirky tidbits involves the sheer variety of things people ran with. Someone fled with a pet parrot in a cage. Another has a ridiculously large houseplant clutched in their arms. You see a man cradling a guitar. These small, incongruous items are poignant reminders of the normal lives that were so abruptly interrupted, and the desperate, often irrational choices people made in the first moments of panic. The sun is a little higher now, casting longer shadows. The white edge of the fog looks even sharper, even more unreal in the direct light. It almost hurts to look at it, not because it's blindingly bright, but because its presence is so fundamentally wrong. It defies physics logic and everything you thought you knew about reality. You feel the cold again, seeping up from the ground, carried on the thin breeze. Survival is shifting from escaping an immediate threat to enduring a prolonged crisis. The initial terror is giving way to a wearying sense of despair and the gnawing practicalities of staying alive. People are starting to move around more or less randomly now. Small groups are forming with more purpose. Someone points towards a distant farm building on a ridge that wasn't touched by the fog. Could there be resources there? Shelter a plan begins to emerge through muttered conversations. A small scouting party should go. The psychological toll is immense. You see people openly weeping, rocking back and forth. Others are staring into the middle distance, their eyes vacant. The shared trauma is a palpable weight in the air. Everyone here has lost everything. Their homes, their possessions, and most likely many of the people they cared about. Historians will pore over survivor accounts, trying to understand the collective psychological impact. How did people process the simultaneous grief of personal loss and the annihilation of their entire environment? What coping mechanisms emerged? Were there instances of profound altruism, or did desperation lead to conflict? These are questions that can only be answered through the fragmented memories and testimonies of those who were there. The day stretches ahead, long and uncertain. The immediate crisis of the fog's arrival has passed, but the crisis of survival is just beginning. You are on a hillside exposed with thousands of other traumatized, resourceless people staring at the clean white edge of oblivion where your life used to be. The low hum from the fog is still there, a faint, persistent vibration. It's easy to ignore in the light and the growing sounds of human activity on the hill, but it's always there, a subtle reminder that the white void is not empty, not inactive. It's just present, and its presence has fundamentally altered the world. The third required light joke for this section, barely a whisper to yourself, surfaces. Well, at least commuting's going to be a lot easier tomorrow. Oh, wait. The absurdity of it all, the sheer unfathomable scale of loss, sometimes makes the dark humor the only way to process it. The sun continues to rise, painting the sky in pale blues and whites. The view is both beautiful and horrific. The untouched countryside stretches away in one direction, green and solid. In the other direction is the impossible white wall. It's a line in the sand drawn by reality itself. You feel utterly drained physically and emotionally. The night was terrifying, the dawn sounds were worse, and the daylight brings the crushing weight of permanence. You need water, you need food, you need shelter, and you need to know what happens next. The murmur on the hillside is growing louder, turning from stunned silence into a confused chorus of low voices. People are clustering in small groups, their faces etched with sleepless exhaustion and profound fear. The idea of a scouting party, first whispered tentatively, is gaining traction, fueled by the gnawing emptiness in everyone's stomachs and the sheer overwhelming need to do something. Anything. Sitting here staring at the impossible white wall feels like waiting to disappear. You watch as a few individuals step forward, their voices a little stronger than the rest. The woman who was shouting about water earlier, pragmatic and direct. A younger man, perhaps in his late 20s, who seems calmer than most, speaking quietly but with clear intent. A middle-aged man in a tweed jacket, looking completely out of place, but somehow radiating a quiet confidence. These are the people stepping up, not out of a desire for power, but because someone has to. It's like a reality TV show nobody signed up for, Survivor London Hillside Edition. Spoiler alert, the prize is just not dying. The discussion is tense, hushed, urgent. Where do they go towards that distant farm on the ridge? It looks untouched, solid. Could there be food, water, shelter? It's a gamble. Leaving the relative safety of the crowd feels dangerous, exposing yourself to what the edge of the fog. Something else out there, but staying feels like a slow death by exposure and starvation. Volunteers are requested. A few hands go up tentatively. People who seem a little more robust, a little less shell-shocked. The younger man who introduces himself as Ben seems to be taking the lead in organizing, asking practical questions. How many people should go? What are their skills? Turns out, expert at binge watching isn't a high-demand skill right now. They decide on a small group. 6 people feels manageable, large enough for safety in numbers, but small enough to move quickly and not draw too much attention. You consider joining them for a moment. The urge to be proactive, to contribute, is strong, but you also feel a bone-deep weariness, a psychological paralysis that keeps your feet rooted to the damp earth. You rationalize it. There are others better suited. Maybe you can help organize things here, or maybe you're just scared. Probably both. The chosen few gather their meager supplies. A couple of empty water bottles, a few stray granola bars someone had in a pocket, a walking stick found lying on the grass. They exchange nervous glances, a shared understanding passing between them. They are going into the unknown, leaving the known terror behind for a potential new one, or perhaps salvation. As the scouting party sets off, trudging uphill toward the ridge, where the farmhouse sits like a beacon of fragile hope, the mood on the hillside shifts again. A wave of anxiety washes over the remaining crowd. They are relying on these 6 strangers. Their hopes for survival are now walking away from them, getting smaller in the distance. The remaining thousands on the hillside are left to face the immediate grinding realities. The cold is relentless. The sun is up, but it offers little warmth. People are huddled together for heat, sharing thin jackets, wrapping themselves in anything they can find. Children are crying intermittently, their small bodies unable to regulate temperature as well as adults. Parents are trying to comfort them, their own faces masks of fear. Thirst is becoming a real problem. Your mouth is dry, your throat scratchy. You eye the dew on the grass, but it's not enough. Someone points to a muddy patch lower down the slope, perhaps a spring. A few people cautiously approach, scooping handfuls of murky water to their lips. Others hesitate, worried about contamination. Bottled water feels like a relic from a different, impossibly luxurious era. Hunger is a dull, constant ache. Any food people had is gone. Searching pockets yields only lint and crumpled receipts. The idea of foraging, which seemed like a quirky historical tidbit earlier, now feels desperately relevant. You scan the hillside. Are there any berry bushes, edible roots? Your urban-tuned eyes see only grass and weeds you can't identify. The psychological impact continues to manifest in different ways. Some people are still numb, sitting silently staring into space. Others are becoming restless, their fear turning into irritability. Small arguments break out over space, over perceived slights, over nothing. The veneer of polite society, thin at the best of times, is cracking under the pressure. A mainstream historical fact that feels particularly relevant right now is the concept of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Though maybe hierarchy is too strong a word when you're missing the entire base layer. During times of extreme crisis, human behavior often reverts to focusing almost exclusively on the most basic physiological needs: air, which thankfully seems fine up here, water, food, shelter, sleep. Social needs, esteem, needs self-actualization. They all disappear when your body is screaming for hydration and calories. Right now, your biggest aspiration is finding a slightly less uncomfortable rock to sit on. The need for shelter is becoming apparent. The hillside is exposed to the wind. As the day wears on, the sun moves and the shadows lengthen, the temperature will drop again. People are looking for natural shelters, small depressions in the ground, the lee side of larger rocks, anything that offers a modicum of protection. The copse of trees higher up the hill is filling up, people squeezing into the limited space under the branches. A quirky or fringe tidbit related to survival pops into your head, something you read about extreme situations, the rule of threes. You can survive roughly 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without shelter in extreme conditions, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. Sitting here without shelter, water, or food, you're acutely aware of that timeline. Okay, so shelter is high priority. Anyone good at building forts out of fear and regret? The lack of sanitation is also starting to become an issue, although in the immediate aftermath, it feels almost too trivial to consider. But with thousands of people crammed onto a single hillside, the logistical nightmares are starting to pile up. This isn't a planned event. There are no facilities, no organization. It's a messy, undignified reality layered on top of the cosmic horror. As the hours tick by, the scouting party shrinks in the distance, eventually disappearing over the ridge. Every eye strains to see them, a collective holding of breath. The silence after they are gone feels heavy, punctuated only by the ambient sounds of the hillside. The wind, the occasional cry, the low hum of the fog still vibrating from the valley. Historians will debate extensively about the role of hope and despair in these initial hours and days. How did the decision to send a scouting party or to join one affect the morale of the larger group? Was it a source of fragile hope, or did the separation create further anxiety and division? Did those who stayed feel abandoned, or were they simply too incapacitated by trauma to move? You watch small groups attempting to pool resources, sharing the last crumbs of food, offering a shoulder to cry on. Acts of kindness emerge from the chaos, small flickers of humanity in the overwhelming darkness. But you also see guarded looks, people clutching their few possessions, a hint of suspicion creeping into interactions. The desperation is palpable, and desperation can bring out the best and the worst in people. The white wall of fog remains silent and immutable. It hasn't receded, hasn't changed shape. It's just, they're run, a constant, terrifying backdrop to the unfolding human drama on the hillside. The low hum is still present, a subtle vibration you can feel in your bones if you listen closely. It's unsettling, a reminder that the strange energy from the night is still active. The sun reaches its peak, casting harsh shadows. The air is a little warmer now, but the wind is picking up. The view from the hillside is panoramic, stretching across miles of untouched countryside in one direction, and ending abruptly at the clean, stark edge of the white void in the other. You can see distant towns, roads, fields, a normal world that feels impossibly far away, separated by this unnatural barrier. People are trying to signal, waving makeshift flags, a bright jacket tied to a stick, a white shirt. They are hoping someone somewhere outside this bubble of disaster has seen what happened and is looking for survivors. But there are no planes, no helicopters, no distant sirens. The silence from the outside world is deafening. One of the quirky tidbits about survival often overlooked is the importance of psychological resilience and maintaining morale. Singing, telling stories, even simple acts of tidiness can help combat despair and maintain a sense of humanity. You don't see much singing happening right now, but people are starting to talk more, sharing fragments of their stories, their losses. It's a way of acknowledging the enormity of it all, of finding a shared language for the unspeakable. The search for water becomes more organized. A small group heads further down the slope towards the muddy patch, carrying whatever containers they have. Plastic bags, cupped hands, a discarded crisp packet someone is trying to fashion into a scoop. The water's likely unsafe, but the need is becoming too urgent to ignore the risks. At this point, a slightly muddy puddle looks like a five-star spa. The scouting party is still out of sight. Hours have passed. Anxiety levels are rising. Did they make it? Did they find anything, or did something happen to them? The uncertainty is almost worse than the terror of the night. At least then, you knew what you were running from. Now you don't know what you're waiting for. The sun is starting its slow descent towards the western horizon. The light is turning golden, casting long, dramatic shadows across the hillside and deepening the unnerving whiteness of the fog below. The beauty of the untouched landscape contrasts starkly with the horror it frames. The practical needs of survival are now paramount. Every decision, every action is filtered through the lens of basic necessity. Where can we find clean water? How do we stay warm tonight? Is there any possibility of finding food? The abstract terror of the vanished city has been replaced by the immediate grinding reality of staying alive minute by minute. Historians will certainly debate the critical moments of decision-making in these initial hours. Chidurayin Surdoin. Who decided where to go? How were resources allocated or not allocated? Were leadership roles assumed or assigned? How did the group dynamics evolve under such intense pressure and deprivation? These aren't just abstract questions. They are the lived experience of every person on this hillside right now. The low hum from the fog seems to intensify slightly as the light begins to fade. Or maybe it's just your nerves heightened by the approaching night. The terrifying sounds of the dawn are a chilling memory, and the thought of facing another night under the gaze of that white wall sends a fresh wave of fear through you. You look towards the ridge where the scouting party disappeared. Still no sign. The hope they carried with them feels fragile, like a flickering candle in a strong wind. The practicalities of survival are pressing down, heavy and insistent. You need to find shelter, you need water, and the sun is setting. The sun dips lower, painting the western sky in bruised purples and fiery oranges, a beautiful mocking spectacle against the grim reality unfolding on the hillside. The air grows colder, the wind sharper. You huddle deeper into yourself, wishing you had more layers. The dull ache of hunger and thirst is a constant companion, now a physical manifestation of your vulnerability. Hours have stretched into an eternity since the scouting party set off, and the collective anxiety on the hillside is a thick, suffocating blanket. Every eye is drawn to the ridge where they disappeared, searching, hoping, dreading. The silence from that direction is deafening. This isn't like waiting for a delayed bus. This is like waiting for your last hope to show up and it's stuck in traffic across the dimension. Then a murmur ripples through the crowd, starting at the front and spreading back like a wave. "Look!" someone shouts, pointing. On the crest of the ridge, tiny figures appear. The scouting party. They are silhouetted against the twilight sky, 6 weary shapes trudging back down the slope. There's no triumphant wave, no energetic sprint. Their gait is slow heavy. Your stomach clenches. This doesn't look like success. As they draw closer, their faces become visible, illuminated by the fading light. They are etched with exhaustion, disappointment, and something deeper, something unsettling. There's a stillness about them that speaks volumes before a single word is uttered. A crowd gathers around them, a mix of desperate hope and crushing apprehension. People are asking questions, voices overlapping, eager for news. Did you find anything? Is there food? What about the fog? The younger man, Ben, steps forward, his voice hoarse but steady. The pragmatic woman is beside him, her usual resilience looking strained. The man in the tweed jacket looks utterly dejected. Ben raises a hand for quiet, and slowly the clamor dies down, replaced by a tense, expectant silence. "We made it to the farmhouse." Ben begins his words slow and measured. It's empty, abandoned. A collective sigh of disappointment sweeps through the crowd. Looks like whoever lived there left in a hurry, or didn't make it out. He pauses, swallowing hard. Everything's overturned. Furniture broken, cupboards bare. It was looted or just trashed in panic. There's nothing left. No food, no water, we could find no blankets, nothing useful. Dashed hopes sting like a physical blow. The farmhouse, that symbol of potential salvation, was a mirage. The low hum of the fog seems to vibrate louder in the ensuing quiet, a cruel counterpoint to their dashed hopes. People exchange grim glances. The reality of their situation just became significantly bleaker. Okay, Plan A. Farmhouse feast is officially off the table. Anyone got a Plan B involving spontaneous food generation or perhaps telekinetic foraging? The pragmatic woman speaks next, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. We checked the outbuildings too. Nothing. Just junk-dried leaves, empty stalls. And then we went towards the fog. This brings a fresh wave of hushed attention. The fog, the source of all this horror, this impossible situation. What did they find at its edge? Did they see anything? In it. We got maybe 20 yards from the edge. She continues, her gaze fixed on the white wall below. It's not just thick mist. It's solid. Solid murmurs of confusion and disbelief ripple through the crowd. What does solid even mean when talking about fog? Ben nods gravely. Yeah, solid. Like hitting a wall. Not a physical wall you can see, but when you try to step into it, it feels like walking into concrete, or maybe thick, cold treacle, but instant. You just stop. Can't push through. Couldn't even put my hand more than a few inches in. It resisted, and it felt wrong, like static, but cold and heavy. Quoshwishuk, another scout, a younger woman with wide, frightened eyes, adds in a small voice. It felt like the air stopped working, like the space itself was full. The description hangs in the air, chilling everyone to the bone. Not a natural phenomenon you can walk through or wait out. A barrier, an impenetrable, unnatural barrier. The clean, stark edge of the fog wasn't just a visual boundary. It was a physical, perhaps even metaphysical one. So not just terrible visibility, then got it. Add impenetrable mystery wall to the list of things trying to end us. The implications are immediate and devastating. They are trapped. The fog isn't going to dissipate and reveal London underneath. It's a cage wall. And the other direction away from the fog leads to empty farmhouses and presumably just more of the unaltered countryside with no sign of rescue or external contact. Panic, which had been simmering just below the surface, begins to bubble up again. Voices rise this time, not in questions, but in cries of distress, fear, and frustration. We're stuck, someone wails. What do we do now? There's nothing. The scouting party, the bearers of this terrible news, look as devastated as everyone else. They risk themselves, push through exhaustion and fear, only to return with confirmation of their worst fears. They didn't find salvation. They found a dead end. The man in the tweed jacket clears his throat, drawing attention. He looks less like a competent leader and more like a man who just received a particularly nasty piece of bad news from his doctor. We also tried signaling, he says quietly, from the highest point we could find near the farm. Wave jackets, scarves, nothing. No planes, no sounds of vehicles, no response at all. It's like we're in a bubble. The silence that follows this confirms the dawning horror. They are isolated, completely cut off from the rest of the world. The eerie quiet from outside the fog isn't just an absence of sound, it's an absence of them. A mainstream historical fact that resonates acutely in this moment is the concept of a quarantine, or cordon sanitaire. Historically, these were physical barriers or zones established to prevent the spread of disease or contamination. While this fog isn't a biological threat in the traditional sense, its effect is similar. It has created an isolated zone, cutting off movement and contact. The difference, of course, is that this cordon wasn't established by human authorities. It simply is a vast, unexplained wall preventing escape or entry. Like the world just decided you all needed a timeout, but forgot to build a gate. People are starting to cry openly now, tears streaming down the faces grimy with dirt and fatigue. Children, sensing the shift in adult moods, begin to whimper. The stoic facade many had maintained is crumbling under the weight of this new devastating information. The hope that had sustained them, however fragile, has been extinguished. Questions are hurled at the scouts less about what they found and more about why. Why is it solid? What is this thing? How do we get out? The scouts have no answers. They are as bewildered and terrified as everyone else. The reality of their predicament settles like a heavy stone in your chest. Trapped on a cold hillside with no food, no water, no shelter, and no possibility of external help. The terrifying mystery of the vanished city has given way to the brutal practical problem of immediate survival within an inescapable zone. A quirky or fringe tidbit that crosses your mind in this moment of despair is the psychological phenomenon known as learned helplessness. This is a state that occurs after a person or animal has endured repeatedly painful or otherwise aversive stimuli, which it is unable to avoid or escape. Eventually, the organism stops trying to avoid the stimuli and behaves as if it is utterly helpless to change the situation. Right now, the news of the solid fog combined with the failed search for resources is a powerful aversive stimulus that could easily induce this state in many people. So resisting the urge to just curl up and accept your fate, that's officially your new full-time job. You see signs of it already. Some people slump to the ground, their faces vacant. Others begin to argue amongst themselves, their fear turning outward. The initial unity born of shared trauma is starting to fray under the pressure of despair. The pragmatic woman from the scouting party tries to rally people, her voice still rough, but carrying a spark of defiance. Okay, so the farm's empty, and the fog's weird. That doesn't mean we give up. We're still here, we need to figure out what's next. But the energy isn't there. The news has sucked the air out of the crowd. The hard questions, bullet point from the outline, is manifesting not just as verbal inquiries, but as silent internal crises. How do you make decisions when all the parameters of reality have changed? Who is in charge? How do you organize thousands of desperate people with no resources and no clear path forward? The man in the tweed jacket who introduced himself earlier as Mr. Abernathy seems to be trying to impose some order, his voice trembling slightly. We need to consider our options. Clearly, the farm wasn't the answer. The fog is impassable. What about going further into the countryside away from London? It's a logical question, but a daunting one. Where would they go? How far without maps, without knowing the terrain, without supplies? And what if the bubble extends further than just the immediate area around London? What if it's miles wide? Historians will later debate the critical importance of leadership and information dissemination in these initial hours. Howie, how did the scouting party's report delivered verbally to a panicked crowd shape the immediate future? Were there individuals who stepped up effectively, or did the lack of clear authority lead to further chaos? The scattering of people into small, desperate groups searching for water hints at the breakdown of any larger organizational structure. You look at the faces around you, tired, scared, bewildered. The shared experience of escaping the fog had created a temporary bond, but now the individual struggle for survival is reasserting itself. Every person is grappling with their own fear, their own losses, their own rapidly dwindling physical reserves. The thought of another night on this exposed hillside is unbearable. The cold is already seeping into your bones. The sun has vanished completely now, leaving only the pale reflected light from the eastern sky and the unnerving luminescence of the white fog below. The hum feels stronger in the darkness, a low resonant thrum that seems to come from the very ground beneath your feet. It's a sound that is starting to feel less like an ambient effect and more like a deliberate presence. The despair is thick enough to taste. The scouts brought back not supplies or a way out, but only confirmation of their isolation and helplessness. The hard questions aren't just about practical survival anymore. They're existential. What kind of world is this where a city can just vanish? What kind of force can create an impenetrable wall of fog? And what happens now to the thousands left on this cold, dark hillside with nothing but their fear and the knowledge that there is nowhere left to run? The night stretches before you, a long, terrifying prospect. The news from the scouting party hangs heavy in the air, a death knell to the last vestiges of organized hope. The large milling crowd moments ago, a single entity bound by anticipation shatters. It's not an explosion, but a rapid, chilling disintegration. The collective gasp gives way to a low hum of individual despair, then quickly escalates into scattered cries, shouts, and desperate mutterings. People aren't listening to the scouts anymore. They're listening to the gnawing fear in their own guts. You watch as the fragile unity dissolves. The man in the tweed jacket, Mr. Abernathy, is still trying to talk, gesturing towards the empty landscape, away from the fog, suggesting they move further inland. But his voice, thin and reedy with exhaustion and fear, is lost in the rising tide of panic. Nobody's forming a new organized march away from the ridge. Instead, small knots of people are pulling away from the main cluster, driven by immediate primal needs. The most urgent need you quickly realize is water. The scouting party mentioned finding none at the farmhouse. Days have passed since the fog rolled in, maybe 2, maybe 3 times, has blurred into an endless, anxious present. Your mouth is dry, your throat feels like sandpaper. Others are clearly feeling it too. You see people wandering towards depressions in the ground, scanning the hillside for any sign of moisture. A few start digging frantically at the base of rocks, hoping for seepage. Groups form not by design or leadership, but by proximity and shared purpose. A family huddles together, the parents murmuring grimly, while the children look on with wide, terrified eyes. A couple of younger men, perhaps, friends who escaped together, start jogging down the slope, their eyes darting left and right, searching for anything that looks like a stream or pool. An older woman, her face etched with resignation, simply sinks to the ground, burying her face in her hands. The air fills with the sounds of this fragmentation, urgent whispers, sharp questions, soft sobs, the scuffing of shoes on dry earth, the rustle of clothing. The shared trauma that held everyone together on the climb up the hill is no longer enough. The immediate individual fight for survival has begun. It feels a bit like the end of a terrible party, where everyone realizes they have to find their own ride home in the pouring rain, except the rain is despair and there are no cars. You see a small commotion erupt near a patch of darker, slightly moist earth. 2 figures are kneeling, cupping handfuls of muddy water to their lips. Another person rushes towards them, shouting something angry. There's a brief, tense standoff before the first 2 scramble away, clutching their meager findings. Ah, yes, the dawn of civilization, or maybe the dusk. Either way, resource allocation is getting spicy. It's a small incident, but it sends a jolt through you. This isn't just about surviving the fog. It's about surviving each other now. The pragmatic woman from the scouting party is trying to keep a few people together, talking urgently about rationing whatever meager snacks people still possess, about organizing searches in different directions, away from the fog, of course, about building some kind of rudimentary shelter before night fully descends. But her practicality, usually a comfort, feels fragile in the face of the overwhelming chaos. People are too scared, too thirsty, too focused on their own immediate desperation to listen to long-term plans. A mainstream historical fact that comes to mind is the infamous Donner Party. While a much smaller group in a different kind of disaster being trapped by snow, their story tragically illustrates how quickly resource scarcity and isolation can lead to the breakdown of social order, conflict, and ultimately horrifying choices driven by desperation. It's a grim parallel, perhaps, but the fear you see on the faces around you, the sudden sharp possessiveness over potential resources, feels like the terrifying first steps down that same path. You instinctively check your own pockets again, though you know they are empty save for lint and a crumpled receipt. The thought of hunger is becoming almost as visceral as the thirst. What did you eat last breakfast, maybe? Or was it just coffee? Your memory feels as hazy as the fog itself. The man in the tweed jacket, Mr. Abernathy, manages to gather a small, somewhat bewildered group around him. He's talking about finding high ground, about trying to signal again in the morning, about staying together for safety. But the magnetic pull of individual need is stronger than his hesitant authority. Even as he speaks, people peel away from his group, drawn by the desperate hope of finding water, or perhaps just overwhelmed and needing to retreat into themselves. The landscape so recently a potential haven now feels hostile. The rolling hills offer no obvious sources of water. The sparse trees provide little shelter from the cold wind that has picked up. The ground is hard and dry. Every feature of the terrain seems to mock their desperate search. You see someone trying to fashion a cup out of a large leaf, holding it under a rock face, hoping to catch dripping condensation. Another person is gnawing on the bark of a small tree. It's a grim, disorganized scramble, 1,000 individual battles against thirst and the encroaching darkness. Historians will later debate at what precise point the collective we fractured into a multitude of I's. Suriwanistum. Was it the scouting report, the confirmation of being trapped? Was it the dawning realization of immediate needs like water and food? Or was it simply the natural limit of large group cohesion under extreme prolonged stress? It's hard to say where the tipping point was, but you are living through its chaotic aftermath. The air is getting colder. The wind whips strands of hair into your eyes. The setting sun has finally disappeared completely, leaving the sky a deep, bruised purple, almost black, directly overhead. Below the fog remains a stark white, glowing faintly in the encroaching night, a constant, malevolent presence. The low hum seems to intensify with the darkness, feeling less like a sound and more like a pressure, a vibration in your bones. You need water. The urge is overpowering. You scan the area, your eyes trying to pierce the gloom. Where could there be water? Was there a stream marked on a map you might have seen once? Useless thoughts. There are no maps. You decide to head downhill away from the main cluster that's still loosely centered around the scouting party, but also avoiding the edge of the fog. Maybe lower down there might be a dip in the land where water collected. It's a gamble, a desperate, unguided hunt. You join a few other scattered figures, moving with the same purpose, though you don't speak to them. Communication feels difficult, almost dangerous in this new atmosphere of fear and suspicion. As you move, you see others forming small groups, perhaps of people who knew each other before. These groups seem slightly more cohesive, sharing what little they have, looking out for each other. You see one small family carefully rationing pieces of what looks like a crushed biscuit. Another group of what seem like colleagues from an office is trying to build a windbreak out of branches and coats. These pockets of cooperation are small islands in the rising tide of every person for themselves. A quirky or fringe tidbit that surfaces in your weary mind is the concept of limbic resonance. This is the idea that the brain's limbic system, which controls emotions and memory, is an open-loop system, meaning it's not self-contained, but is designed for mutual regulation. In times of stress, emotional states can spread rapidly through a group, influencing each other's brain chemistry and behavior. Right now, the dominant emotion is fear, and you can feel it vibrating in the air, amplified by every panicked glance, every sharp word, every sob. It's contagious, and it's poisoning the atmosphere. You stumble slightly, your legs weak with fatigue and dehydration. The ground is uneven. You can feel the sharp edges of rocks and twigs through the soles of your shoes. Every step is an effort. This isn't like a hike where you know there's water and a warm meal waiting at the end. This is just trudging into uncertainty driven by a biological imperative you can't ignore. Remember those annoying self-help gurus telling you to trust the process? Yeah, this feels less like trusting a process and more like being chased by one. The scramble for resources isn't just about water. You see people rummaging through abandoned backpacks searching for anything useful. Food, a lighter, a blanket. There's a sense of hurried desperation, a fear of being caught, even though there's no one officially in charge, no police, no authority figures to enforce rules. The rules of civilization seem to have vanished along with London. You pass by a discarded crisp packet, its bright colors mocking you. Empty, of course. Everything is empty. The hope that the farmhouse represented is gone, replaced by the bleak reality of scarcity. The only thing abundant here is fear and the unnerving silence from the shrouded city below. You find a slight depression in the ground, perhaps, where a small puddle collected after a rain shower days ago. It's mostly dry earth, but there are patches of dampness. You sink to your knees, pushing the earth aside, hoping against hope. Your fingers find only cold, damp soil, nothing to drink. The disappointment is a physical ache. You look around at the scattered figures on the hillside, each one a tiny isolated point of desperation against the vastness of the darkening landscape and the impenetrable white wall of the fog. The night will be cold. Without fire, without shelter, without water or food, the hours stretch ahead like an eternity. The hard questions posed by the scouting party's news have immediately become practical, brutal problems. How do you survive tonight? How do you survive the crushing weight of despair, the breakdown of the group, the desperate hunt for resources, the first glimmers of conflict? It all paints a terrifying picture of the hours to come. Sleep feels impossibly far away. The last sliver of sun dips below the horizon, plunging the hillside into a bone-chilling gloom. You can feel the temperature dropping rapidly, the dry air biting at your exposed skin. The wind, which felt almost refreshing earlier, now carries a persistent, penetrating chill. Down below, the fog hasn't changed. It remains a solid, unnatural white, eerily luminous in the fading light, hugging the ground and swallowing the ruined city whole. It seems to pulse faintly, or maybe that's just your eyes playing tricks in the dimness, amplified by exhaustion and fear. The frantic energy of the water search in the late afternoon has given way to a weary, desperate shuffle. People are no longer running, they're stumbling. The urgent shouts have softened into low moans and whimpers. The sounds of digging have mostly stopped, replaced by the rustle of people trying to make themselves slightly less miserable. Pulling coats tighter, huddling closer together, where small, fragile groups still exist. You haven't found water. Nobody near you has. The damp patch you found earlier yielded nothing drinkable, just mud. Your mouth feels like a desert floor, cracked and dusty. Swallowing is an effort, your throat constricting painfully. You realize you haven't even thought about food for hours. Thirst is the dominant, overwhelming sensation, a biological alarm bell that drowns out all other needs. It's a singular, relentless focus, water, water, water. You see figures moving like ghosts in the twilight, still scanning the ground, still probing at the base of rocks, driven by that same desperate need. But the light is fading fast, making the search increasingly futile. Soon it will be completely dark, and the only light will be the faint, unsettling glow of the fog below, and the sparse, cold pinpricks of distant stars overhead, if the clouds allow. The atmosphere is thick with fear and despair. It's palpable, a heavy blanket settling over the hillside. You can feel it in the way people move hunched and wary, and the quick, nervous glances exchanged in the way they recoil if you get too close. The fragile social bonds that somehow persisted through the climb and the initial waiting have snapped under the pressure of immediate unmet needs. You see a couple of figures arguing in hushed, angry tones near a small cluster of rocks. It looks like they're fighting over space, maybe trying to claim a slightly more sheltered spot. There are shoves, a sharp cry, then silence as one figure stumbles away into the growing darkness. Nobody intervenes. Everyone is too preoccupied with their own survival, too wary of drawing attention, too afraid to spend energy on anything that doesn't directly benefit them. This isn't just about thirst anymore. It's about the cold that's seeping into your bones. It's about the gnawing emptiness in your stomach. It's about the sheer crushing weight of being utterly alone in this desperate situation, even surrounded by hundreds of other people. It's the terrifying realization that the rules have changed, that the safety net you took for granted your entire life, the police, hospitals, shops, the basic assumption that others would help or at least not actively harm you is gone. You remember reading about survival situations, about how quickly people can regress under extreme pressure. A mainstream historical fact that chillingly resonates is the experience of the survivors of the Andes flight disaster in 1972. Isolated in a harsh, freezing environment with no resources, they faced unimaginable challenges, including resorting to cannibalism to survive. While hopefully this situation won't reach that level of extremity, the speed with which basic human decency seems to be eroding here, driven by thirst and fear, feels like a terrifying echo of that same descent into primal survival. It makes you look at the people around you with a new, uncomfortable wariness. Who are they now? What lines will they cross when pushed further? You find a slightly less exposed spot behind a small rise in the ground. It's not shelter, not really, but it breaks the wind a little. You sink down, pulling your knees to your chest, trying to conserve warmth. The ground is hard and cold beneath you. Every muscle aches. Sleep feels impossible, a distant luxury. Your mind is racing, replaying the day's events, trying to make sense of something utterly nonsensical. The fog, the vanished city, the climb, the failed scouts, the current miserable reality. A quirky or fringe tidbit that pops into your head, perhaps a desperate attempt to distract yourself from the cold, and thirst is the concept of catastrophic thinking. This is a cognitive distortion where you focus on the worst possible outcome, often jumping to extreme conclusions based on minimal evidence. It's easy to see how that's rampant here. Every rustle in the dark, every distant cry, every shadow seems to confirm the worst-case scenario. Your own brain is doing it, running through every terrible possibility, painting vivid, terrifying pictures of the future, or lack thereof. It's not helpful, but it feels impossible to stop. Your brain, bless its little cotton socks, is apparently determined to make you miserable even when the outside world is doing a perfectly good job already. You try closing your eyes, but the darkness behind your eyelids is just as unsettling as the darkness outside. You hear sounds, coughs, sniffles low, murmuring the occasional choked sob, the scuff of someone shifting position. There's a low growl somewhere nearby, maybe an argument over a discarded piece of plastic someone thinks they can use. It's the soundtrack of collective misery and fragmentation. Historians will later argue whether the true fall occurred when the fog rolled in, or whether it was this night on the hillside when the veneer of civilization finally cracked under the weight of thirst, cold, and absolute uncertainty. Was the city the container for the social contract, and once it vanished, did the contract vanish too? Or were people inherently more fragile and self-interested than anyone dared to admit? It's an academic debate, one that feels utterly irrelevant right now. What you're experiencing is the messy, terrifying reality of it played out in shoves over rocky ground and whispered threats in the dark. You shiver uncontrollably. The cold is seeping through your clothes. You try rubbing your arms, slapping your legs, anything to generate a little warmth. It doesn't help much. You fantasize about a warm blanket, a cup of hot tea, a soft bed. These simple things feel like unattainable treasures from a forgotten lifetime. The faint glow of the fog seems to intensify as the night deepens. It doesn't seem to extend upwards, staying firmly anchored to the ground, a malevolent, luminous sea below. It doesn't make noise, but its sheer, unnatural presence feels like a constant pressure, a silent observer of the unfolding human tragedy on the hill. You think about the scouting party again. They went down into that. The farmhouse was empty. Did they find anything, or you're thinking, okay. The thought is quickly dismissed. If they found anything, if they were okay, they would have returned with help, with hope. Their failure was the catalyst for this current nightmare. They are likely gone, swallowed by the same nothingness that took London. The realization is a heavy stone in your gut. Sleep deprivation is starting to mess with your mind. You see shapes in the darkness that aren't there, hear whispers on the wind that aren't real. Your thoughts are becoming disjointed, jumping from desperate plans, digging a well with your fingernails, to pointless memories, that embarrassing thing you said in high school. It's a sign of how stressed your system is. Yep, your brain has officially decided to go off menu. Appetizers include panic, main course is probably delusions. Dessert is existential dread. You see a small fire flicker into existence some distance away. A few people huddle around it, a tiny beacon of warmth and community in the surrounding darkness. Instinct screams at you to go towards it, to seek warmth and the safety of a group. But then you remember the fight you saw earlier, the tension over resources. Is approaching that fire worth the potential conflict? Will they welcome you or see you as a threat, another mouth to feed another body, competing for heat? The risk feels too high. You stay put, watching the distant flames with a mix of longing and fear. Thirst continues its relentless assault. Your lips are cracked, your tongue feels swollen. You try to swallow again, wincing at the dry scrape in your throat. You think about rain, what you wouldn't give for rain right now. Just a simple shower, enough to collect a few drops, enough to ease this burning agony. But the sky is clear and different. You adjust your position again, trying to find a slightly less uncomfortable angle. The cold is getting worse. You tuck your hands under your armpits. It's a pathetic attempt at warmth, but it's all you have. You can hear other people shifting, coughing, trying to get comfortable in a world that offers no comfort. The desperation around you is palpable. You can almost taste it in the air. Someone cries out in the distance, a sharp, sudden sound that makes you flinch. Was it fear, pain, anger? You don't know. You don't ask. You just huddle tighter, wishing you could disappear. The night stretches on an endless, agonizing wait for a dawn that offers no guarantee of salvation. Every hour feels like an eternity. Your body aches, your mind is a swirling mess of fear and regret, and the thirst is a constant, burning reminder of your vulnerability. The promise of the hillside as a sanctuary feels like a cruel joke now. It's just a cold, hard patch of ground where civilization came to die, piece by agonizing piece under the watchful, silent glow of the fog below. Sleep remains a distant, unattainable fantasy. A weak gray light filters through your eyelids, urging you slowly, painfully back towards consciousness. It's not a gentle dawn, more like a reluctant lifting of darkness. Every muscle in your body protests the movement, stiff and sore, from sleeping on hard ground in the cold. Your mouth is a furnace, your tongue thick and dry, a constant reminder of the thirst that gnawed at you all night. You crack an eye open. The first thing you see is the dull uniform gray of the pre-dawn sky. The air is still biting cold, perhaps even colder than it was during the darkest hours. You shiver a deep, uncontrollable tremor that shakes your entire body. It takes a moment for your brain to fully engage, to remember where you are, why you're here, and the sheer, overwhelming bleakness of the situation. Then it all floods back: the fog, the vanishing city, the climb, the failed search, the agonizing night on the hillside. You push yourself up slowly, groaning softly at the stiffness. Around you, the hillside is coming into view under the growing light, and the sight is devastating. It's not the hopeful, resilient morning you might have desperately wished for. It's a tableau of utter exhaustion and despair. Figures are sprawled everywhere, some still huddled in fetal positions, others lying on their backs staring blankly at the sky. There's very little movement. The frantic energy and whispered fears of the night have given way to a heavy, almost unnatural stillness. You see people who look even worse than you feel their faces pale and drawn, their eyes hollow. Some are wrapped in whatever meager layers they could find. Others just endure the cold, too weary to even shiver effectively. There are signs of the night's struggles. Discarded bags, scattered belongings, perhaps even a small dark stain on the ground near where that argument took place. Down below, the fog is still there, unchanged. It fills the basin where the city used to be, a vast, silent, luminous, white expanse. The morning light makes it look less eerie than the night's glow, but no less alien or terrifying. It's simply there, a solid, impenetrable barrier, a constant, mocking presence confirming that nothing has improved, nothing has lifted, nothing has changed except the passage of another miserable night. Yep, still here. Still being creepy, just what you needed for a bright and early start. The full extent of the human cost is now laid bare by the unforgiving light. You see people slumped against rocks who don't appear to be breathing. Others are lying still, covered by a thin blanket or jacket someone has respectfully placed over them, a small, silent acknowledgement of loss in this anonymous crowd. Thirst, cold, exhaustion, perhaps underlying health issues exacerbated by the stress. The night has claimed its victims. There aren't many, not a mass casualty event yet, but even a few still figures scattered amongst the living are a stark, horrifying reminder of the stakes. Turns out being really uncomfortable for hours on end in sub-zero temperatures isn't great for your health. Who knew? You notice that the groups from yesterday have mostly fragmented further. People are more isolated, less willing or able to rely on others. The common enemy, the fog, brought them together yesterday. The common needs, water, warmth, safety, are driving them apart today. The desperation is etched onto every face you can see clearly. You scan the hillside, hoping against hope to see the scouting party returning. A group of figures cresting the hill, maybe carrying supplies, offering a glimmer of hope. But there's nothing. Just the same weary survivors, the same barren landscape, the same silent white abyss below. The failure of the scouts feels even more crushing in the cold light of day. Their disappearance confirms that the fog is not just a visual phenomenon, it consumes. A mainstream historical fact that comes to mind perhaps because your brain is grasping for parallels, however grim is the experience of survivors after major disasters like earthquakes or tsunamis. While the immediate threat might pass, the aftermath often brings a new set of challenges: lack of resources, breakdown of infrastructure, mass displacement, and the psychological toll. Studies of events like the 2010 Haiti earthquake or the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami in Japan showed that even after the initial destruction, the long-term impact on survivors, including issues like dehydration, starvation exposure, and social disruption, could be equally devastating. What you're experiencing now feels like the chilling start of that long, brutal aftermath, but without any infrastructure left to rebuild. Ah yes, the fun bit where you survive the disaster, But the surviving part turns out to be the real disaster. You try to stand your legs shaky. You need to find water. The urgency is overwhelming. You look around. There's no sign of any source. The damp patch from yesterday is just dry earth now. People are starting to stir the same desperate need driving them. You see figures fanning out again, stumbling down slight inclines, peering behind rocks, searching for anything that might hold moisture. The environmental mystery of the fog is as profound as ever. Why is it contained? Why does it glow? What is it? There's no scientific explanation that fits. It defies known meteorological or chemical phenomena. It appeared suddenly acted selectively consuming the city, but not the surrounding areas above a certain altitude, and persists without changing. It's not like volcanic fog or smog, or even some bizarre chemical release. It feels deliberate, unnatural. A quirky or fringe tidbit that might flicker through your mind, grasping at straws for an explanation, is the concept of terraforming gone wrong from science fiction. The idea of trying to alter an environment on a massive scale, resulting in unforeseen and catastrophic consequences. Or perhaps something even more outlandish like a localized warp in reality, or a sentient atmospheric phenomenon, or maybe even some kind of advanced invisible technology being tested. It's ridiculous, completely unsubstantiated, but your brain is desperate for any framework, no matter how improbable, to make sense of this impossible situation. Your brain, currently running on fumes and pure panic, is now officially pitching sci-fi movie plots. You join the slow, stumbling search. Your eyes scan the ground with fierce intensity, looking for any hint of green, any dip that might collect dew, any sign of life that would indicate moisture. You see others doing the same, their faces grim and focused. There's no collaboration, only individual quests. The social contract so fragile last night seems utterly dissolved by the morning light. You are an island surrounded by other islands, all drifting alone in a sea of shared misery. The sun is now fully above the horizon, a cold, indifferent disk in the pale sky. It offers light but little warmth. The temperature doesn't seem to be rising significantly. The wind is still present, cutting through your thin layers. The sheer physical discomfort is a constant grinding reality on top of the fear and despair. Historians will debate for centuries whether the disappearance of London was a single instantaneous event, or whether the true catastrophe was a slow, agonizing disintegration of human society on the hillside surrounding it. Did the fog cause the collapse of order, or did it merely expose how thin the veneer of civilization was? Was the city the container of society, or was society something more robust? Looking around now, seeing the isolated figures, the silent suffering, the dead, it feels like the latter is the more terrifying reality. The monster wasn't just the fog, it was the vulnerability of humanity when stripped of its comforts and safety nets. You see someone fall in the distance, collapsing onto the ground. Nobody rushes to help. You hesitate for a moment, a flicker of shared humanity. But then you remember your own desperate thirst, your own aching body, the cold. Helping them would expend precious energy you don't have, potentially put you at risk, and gain you nothing towards your own survival. The thought is brutal, ugly, but undeniably true in this new reality. You look away and keep searching for water. The ground is hard, rocky, unforgiving. Every step is an effort. You feel lightheaded, weak. The thirst is a physical pain now, a throbbing ache in your throat and head. You see someone kneeling down, frantically scraping at the base of a large rock. You watch them for a moment, then turn away. Competing feels pointless, exhausting. The fog below remains motionless, silent. It's a constant visual anchor for the disaster. It doesn't seem to be expanding, but it doesn't seem to be dissipating either. It just exists, a solid, unnatural entity. Yup, still doing its thing, just hanging out, being a mysterious, city-eating cloud. Standard Tuesday. You find a small depression in the ground, maybe a foot or two across. It's damp, but there's no standing water. You get on your hands and knees and press your face into the cool earth, trying to suck moisture from the mud. It's disgusting gritty, but there's a tiny, almost imperceptible dampness that offers a fleeting, pathetic relief. You stay there for a few minutes, trying to absorb any moisture you can, ignoring the taste of dirt. It's a humbling, degrading act, a testament to how quickly basic needs can override dignity. As you pull back, your face streaked with mud, you look around again. The scene is the same. People searching, people sitting or lying, still the fog below. The sun climbs higher, but the cold persists. The silence is broken only by the sounds of shuffling feet, occasional coughs, and the wind. There's a growing sense of stagnation, of a terrible status quo setting in. The initial shock and frantic energy are fading, replaced by a grim acceptance of the ongoing hardship. The hope that the fog might lift or rescuers might arrive feels increasingly naive. You are here on this cold hillside with no resources, no help coming, and a terrifying, inexplicable phenomenon separating you from whatever was left of your world. You see figures moving towards the edge of the hillside that overlooks the fog-filled basin. Perhaps they are looking for something, or perhaps they are simply drawn by morbid curiosity or a desperate need to understand the scale of the loss. You consider joining them, but the effort feels too great. The fog offers nothing but questions, and right now you need answers about survival. The sun is now fully up, casting long shadows across the rocks. The dead are more visible, now lying still and silent. You try not to look too closely. They are a chilling preview of the potential future, a stark reminder of the fragility of life in these conditions. Thirst dominates everything. Every thought, every action is directed towards the desperate need for water. Your throat burns, your head throbs. You feel like you could drink a river dry. The muddy water you just tried to consume feels like it did nothing at all. You look at the sky. It's clear, a cold, empty blue. Not a single cloud in sight. No sign of rain, no relief coming from above. Just the indifferent, vast emptiness. You push yourself up again, wiping the mud from your face. You have to keep searching. Staying still means giving up, and something deep inside you, some stubborn, primal instinct, refuses to do that. You stumble forward, joining the silent, desperate procession of survivors searching for the one thing that might keep them alive a little longer. The hillside is no longer a sanctuary. It's just a temporary, miserable holding pen overlooking an unimaginable void. You're running your breath, ragged and burning in your chest, the metallic tang of the fog, a ghost on the air, even where it hasn't yet reached. The bridge is gone behind you now, swallowed by the relentless white. The streets you flee through are scenes of utter pandemonium. The initial shock has worn off for many, replaced by a desperate primal instinct: survive. And survival in this moment seems to mean getting away from the ground, away from the fog's consuming reach. Suddenly, a new direction emerges from the chaos. People are no longer just running aimlessly. They're heading towards the taller buildings, scrambling for fire escapes, kicking in basement windows. Though that seems counterintuitive, anything to get up, the idea takes hold quickly, spreading through the terrified crowd like a sudden shared understanding. Maybe the fog stays low. Maybe higher ground offers safety. It's a desperate hope born of pure terror, but it's a direction, a purpose. You find yourself swept along with a surge of people, turning down a narrower street, all heading towards the solid, imposing walls of a grand building, maybe a bank or government office. Its stone facade looks impregnable, its height offering a tantalizing possibility of escape. The ornate front doors are locked or jammed by the panicked crowd, but people are already scaling the railings, trying to reach the lower windows. Others are running around to the back, hoping for service entrances or loading docks. The air fills with the scrape of boots on stone, the grunts of exertion, and the low murmur of desperate prayers and fearful whimpers. You push your way towards a side alley where a rickety external staircase is visible, likely a fire escape. It looks ancient, possibly not designed for this kind of load, but it's a way up. People are already jamming onto the lower steps, a bottleneck forming as they try to ascend 2 or 3 at a time. The fog, meanwhile, isn't waiting. You can see it at the end of the street, a silent, implacable white tide flowing around corners, seeping under doors, licking at the base of lampposts before they too vanish. It's gaining on you. The urgency is a physical weight on your chest, urging you to climb, climb, climb. You reach the bottom of the staircase, joining the desperate throng. It sways slightly under the weight, the metal groaning in protest. Every step upwards is a fight against the press of bodies below and the fear of the structure collapsing. You grip the cold metal railing, hauling yourself up, your muscles screaming in protest. As you climb, the perspective changes. You can see more of the city now, a terrifying panorama. The white is spreading like a plague, a cancerous growth consuming the familiar urban landscape. Parks are disappearing, squares are vanishing, whole blocks are simply becoming blank white spaces. It's like watching someone take a giant eraser to London. From this height, you can see the pattern. It's not random. It's flowing, covering the lowest points, first filling the streets and alleys like a liquid, but then it's also rising, seemingly climbing the sides of buildings, a silent climbing wave. The hope that this is just a low-lying fog starts to feel fragile, a thin shield against the encroaching dread. You reach the first landing, pausing for a precious second to catch your breath. Below, the alley is filling with the white. It's flowing onto the bottom step of the staircase, now silent, relentless. The people still on the ground level below you scream, a single collective horrifying sound that is instantly cut off as the fog engulfs them. The lower part of the staircase disappears into the white. You can't see the steps, can't see the people who were on them. Just white, and absolute silence where the screams were a moment before. The cold rises with the fog, a palpable wave washing over your feet, urging you higher still. You scramble up the next flight, the metal groaning louder now. The wind is different up here, cooler, less tainted by the fog's strange smell. But the sight is worse. The sheer scale of the disappearances is breathtaking, and not in a good way. Looking out over the city, it's like a map where huge sections are being wiped clean in real time. Some people have made it to the rooftops of lower buildings, huddled together like frightened birds. But even as you watch, you see the fog begin to creep up the sides of those buildings, tendrils of white snaking upwards. It's not just filling space, it's climbing. The higher ground theory may be just another false hope crumbling under the weight of this impossible reality. You reach a higher landing, perhaps the 4th or 5th floor. From here you can see the dense white mass below, featureless and terrifying. You can see other staircases on nearby buildings also jammed with desperate souls scrambling upwards. You can see the fog reaching the level of the 2nd or 3rd floors on buildings across the street, swallowing windows and architectural details as it ascends. The sheer audacity of the event is almost unbelievable. London had certainly faced its share of crises throughout history, from the Great Fire of 1666 that reshaped the city's landscape to the Blitz of World War II that tested its resilience. But this feels fundamentally different. Those were tangible enemies, understandable disasters. This is an act of nature turned malevolent, or something else entirely, something that defies comprehension. You need to keep moving. You push onwards, higher and higher. The air thins slightly, the sounds of the city below. The distant sirens, the shouts, the general murmur of panic become fainter, muffled by the rising tide of silence emanating from the fog itself. A woman on the landing above you is sobbing quietly, clutching a framed photograph. A man nearby is shouting into the empty air, pleading for help. Others are just silently climbing their faces, grim masks of fear and exhaustion. There's no more jostling, no more fighting for position. Everyone is simply focused on the arduous task of putting distance between themselves and the advancing white. As you ascend another flight, you catch sight of something odd. On a rooftop across the way, a small group of people are frantically waving flags, maybe trying to signal for help. Though who they expect to see them through the fog, let alone help, is a mystery. As the fog creeps up the side of their building, you see it reach the rooftop edge. The people, the flags, they vanish instantly, silently. It's the same chilling efficiency you witnessed on the street. No struggle, no sound, just gone. The scale of the disappearances is becoming almost too much to bear. How many people are down there swallowed by that endless white? How many buildings, streets lives? It's an unthinkable number. Historians still argue whether the official population estimates for London in the early 20th century accurately captured the true number of residents, including unregistered lodgers and recent migrants. But whatever the exact figure, the potential scale of this event is staggering. The city is being depopulated not by war or disease, but by a silent, consuming void. You reach a point on the staircase where you can look down several flights below. The fog has climbed higher now, a featureless white wall obscuring everything beneath the 3rd floor. The silence emanating from it is absolute. It's not just quiet. It feels like sound is being actively suppressed. You can hear the creak of the stairs, the breathing of the people near you, the distant sounds above. The fog, but nothing from it. It's an active, terrifying null. A wave of dizziness washes over you. The combination of exertion fear and the unsettling sight below is overwhelming. You lean against the cold metal railing, trying to steady yourself. The metal feels strangely smooth, almost oily, despite its apparent age and rust. A quirky detail in the midst of the horror. You notice something else as you climb. A faint iridescent shimmer just at the very edge of the fog, a fleeting play of colors like oil on water. It's only visible for a second before it vanishes into the uniform white. But it's there. It adds another layer of strangeness to this impossible phenomenon. What is this stuff? What is it doing? The air is getting colder as you ascend a dry, penetrating cold that seems to leach the warmth from your bones. The strange metallic, earthy smell is weaker up here, but still present, carried on the slight breeze. The higher you get, the more exposed you feel, but also the further you are from the churning white mass below. It's a precarious balance. You reach a landing on the 7th floor. The staircase seems to end here, leading to a bolted metal door. People are desperately trying to force it open, but it's solid. Others are trying windows, but they're either barred or too high to break easily. It feels like a dead end. Panic starts to bubble up again. If you can't get inside, can't get higher. What do? Go back down into the fog. The thought is instantly dismissed. Going down is not an option. Going down is oblivion. Someone manages to pry open a small high window near the door. A man peers out, his face etched with despair. "It's everywhere," he whispers, his voice hoarse. "It's reaching the rooftops already on some buildings." You look out the same window, your heart sinking. He's right. Across the skyline, you can see fingers of white reaching over the parapets of shorter buildings. On some of the taller ones, it's halfway up their facades. It's not stopping, it's climbing everything. The hope of higher ground was just a temporary reprieve, a brief illusion of safety. The fog isn't confined to the ground. It's a three-dimensional void that is steadily filling the city. The realization hits you with chilling clarity. Unless this phenomenon stops, unless it dissipates or moves on, there is no escape within London. The entire city is being consumed from the lowest underground tunnels. You shudder at the thought of anyone caught down there to the highest rooftops. Perhaps this is some bizarre atmospheric event, a unique convergence of pollutants and weather, though no known meteorological phenomenon could explain the disappearances. Historians still argue whether the notorious London fogs of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, a toxic mix of coal smoke and natural mist, could have theoretically triggered unforeseen chemical reactions on an unprecedented scale. But even the most extreme theories fall far short of this reality. This isn't chemistry. It feels like physics is breaking, or maybe something else entirely. You look back down the stairwell. The white mass is steadily rising, silently consuming the lower flights. The cold is more intense now, the metallic smell stronger. The air around you feels heavy, charged with the strange energy of the event. A small dark object bobs in the white mist below you for a moment before vanishing. Maybe a hat or a book bag. Just another discarded fragment of a life being erased. It's a small, poignant detail in this grand, terrifying vanishing act. Like finding a lost sock on Everest. Except Everest isn't trying to eat you. You need another plan. Climbing seems futile now. What else? Try to get out of the city entirely? That seems like the only remaining option, however improbable. But how? The roads leading out must be chaos, likely already consumed by the fog given its speed. You remember reading a funny story about London cabbies, how they had to pass a rigorous test called the knowledge to memorize every street alley and landmark. You briefly wonder if any of them memorized the best route out of the city during an existential fog event. Probably not covered in the curriculum. Okay, maybe not that funny, but it's either find humor or scream. The people on the landing are starting to realize the staircase ends here. Despair is setting in, heavy and suffocating. Some are crying openly, others are sitting down, seemingly resigned. A man is frantically shouting insults at the bolted door, as if it's personally responsible for their predicament. The fog has reached the 6th floor, now a silent white wall, rising steadily towards you. The cold is intense, and the strange smell is strong enough here to make your eyes water. You can feel the hairs on your arms standing on end. You have to move. Staying here means being consumed. The idea of descending back towards the fog is unthinkable, but you can't go higher here. Your eyes scan the building, the surrounding rooftops. Is there any way to cross to another building? Any fire escape that goes higher? Any sign of a way out? The panic is a cold, sharp blade now cutting through your thoughts. You need to escape the vertical trap, the climbing white silence. You need to find a horizontal path away, out of the ever-shrinking zone of visibility. But looking out over the city, it seems the zone is shrinking everywhere all at once. The towers that pierce the sky are becoming islands in a rising white sea. How long until they too are submerged? How long until this building, this flimsy metal staircase, is just another lost memory swallowed by the silent, consuming white? The thought is terrifying, but it spurs you into action. You can't stay here and wait for the inevitable. You have to try. The bolted door. It glares at you from the landing, a solid, impenetrable barrier. The hope of higher ground, the desperate scramble upwards, seems to terminate here, 7 floors up, still far below the churning white sea that is silently devouring the city. The people around you share your grim realization. Some are kicking the door uselessly, others slump against the wall defeated. The cold is biting now, intensified by the altitude and the strange chill radiating from the rising fog. That metallic, earthy smell is stronger here, a constant, unpleasant presence. But you can't stop. You saw what happened below. The silent, total erasure. Staying here is just postponing the inevitable. You have to find a way through this building or over it or somehow connect to another path. Your eyes dart around the landing, scanning for alternatives. The windows are high, thick, and mostly barred. The wall feels solid stone. There has to be a way. There has to be. Someone is yelling near the bolted door. A man maybe in his 50s, his face red with exertion and panic. He's trying to reason with the unyielding metal listing its supposed function. This is a fire escape landing. There should be access. It's the law. He's right, of course. Building codes, safety regulations. You briefly wonder if anyone considered a scenario where the ground is the danger, and escape means going sideways or up, not down. Probably not in the standard handbook. Classic oversight, really. Always plan for the zombie apocalypse, never the existential fog event. You spot a small window higher up on the wall just under the eaves. It looks like a service window, maybe accessing a storage area or attic space. It's smaller than the others, less reinforced, and crucially not barred. It's a long reach high above your head. A few people notice it too, their eyes following yours. A shared spark of desperate possibility ignites. Getting up there is the next problem. There's nothing to climb. No ladder, no pipes, just a smooth stone wall. But desperation is a powerful motivator, isn't it? People start looking at each other, assessing who might be able to boost whom. Someone suggests a human ladder. It's risky, probably against every known safety guideline, but the alternative is waiting for the fog. Waiting isn't an option. A few strong-looking individuals position themselves against the wall, cupping their hands. Others try to climb onto their shoulders. It's clumsy, unstable, and terrifyingly slow. You join in, offering your own strength, helping to stabilize the base, or taking a turn being boosted. The metal of the railing digs into your back as you lean against it, trying to get leverage. The groaning of the overloaded staircase below you is a constant, unsettling reminder of the precariousness of your situation. Finally, someone agile manages to get high enough, scrambling onto the shoulders of 2 people. He reaches the window, fumbling with the latch. It's stiff, old, maybe painted shut. He strains his muscles, bulging his breath, ragged. Below, the fog is steadily rising. You can see the white edge just below the 5th floor landing now. Silence follows its ascent. With a sudden crack and screech of old metal, the latch gives way. The small window swings inward. A cheer, weak and breathless, goes up from the group. But it's short-lived. The opening is small, barely big enough for a person to squeeze through. And it's dark inside, dusty, promising only an uncertain path. But it's a path. It's not the fog. One by one, people start trying to get through. It's an awkward, undignified process. You have to contort your body, push with your feet, haul yourself through the narrow opening. Dust motes dance in the thin light that penetrates the gloom inside. The air is stale, thick with the smell of forgotten things and old stone. Your turn comes. You are boosted up, grabbing the sill, scrabbling for purchase. The stone is cold and rough against your hands. You twist, trying to fit your shoulders through the gap. For a moment, you feel stuck, panic rising in your throat. Then, with a final push and pull, you pop through, tumbling onto a dusty floor on the other side. You're in a narrow, dark space, likely an attic or crawl space just under the roof. It smells like old wood insulation and mice. Not exactly pleasant, but infinitely better than the metallic tang of the fog. You scramble to your feet, brushing dust off your clothes. Others are coming through behind you, one after another, a silent, determined line of refugees from the rising white. You can hear the sounds of the city strangely muffled through the roof structure above you. Distant sirens, maybe even shouts, but they sound far away like echoes from another world. And below, absolute silence. The fog. You move forward into the darkness, feeling your way. The floor is uneven, covered in debris. Beams crisscross overhead, creating obstacles in the dim light. It's a maze of dust and shadows. But there's a faint light source ahead, filtering through gaps in the roof tiles or a skylight. You head towards it, the others following closely behind. The space opens up slightly, revealing a larger area under the apex of the roof. Dust hangs thick in the air, catching the weak light. Ahead you can see a more defined shape, a door or perhaps a hatch leading higher. It's promising. As you navigate the clutter, your foot kicks something hard. You stoop to investigate. It's a pile of old newspapers. You pick one up, the paper brittle with age. The headline is faded, but you can make out a date from the early 20th century. A quirky detail, trapped in an attic filled with history, fleeing a future that seems to be erasing everything. London's history is long and storied, filled with periods of intense change. London underwent significant periods of expansion and architectural change in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, driven by population growth and industrial development. It's strange to think about the people who built this place, lived their lives in it, never imagining it would become a vertical escape route from an impossible disaster. You reach the hatch. It's made of wood, old and heavy, set horizontally into the ceiling of the crawl space. Likely access to the very peak of the roof or a small observation area. There's a simple bolt on it. You slide it back, the metal protesting with a groan that echoes in the quiet space. Pushing the hatch open requires effort. It's heavy and thick with dust. You heave upwards, shoulders straining. A rush of cooler, cleaner air descends, carrying the faint scent of rain or ozone. It's refreshing, a welcome change from the stale attic air and the distant metallic tang of the fog. You pull yourself up through the opening and onto the roof. The sight takes your breath away, and not in a good way. You're high up now, higher than you've been before, on a broad, relatively flat rooftop. The city stretches out around you, or what's left of it. Below, the white expanse is vast, featureless, and terrifying. It covers everything below a certain altitude, like a monstrous, creeping glacier made of mist. Streets, parks, the Thames itself, all gone swallowed by the silent void. From this vantage point, you can see the full horror of the situation. The fog isn't just filling low areas. It's actively climbing its upper edge, uneven, flowing around and up the sides of buildings like thick liquid. On taller structures, it's halfway, 2/3 of the way up. On shorter ones, it's already reaching the rooftops, flowing over parapets and devouring whatever is on top. The sheer scale of the disappearances is laid bare. Whole districts are simply white rectangles on the urban map. It's like a malignant edit, erasing existence with silent efficiency. You look back towards where you came from, mentally tracing the path of the street, the alley, the building you just climbed. It's all gone, a seamless white mass. You realize with a fresh wave of nausea that the staircase, the lower floors of the building, the people who didn't make it to the 7th floor landing, they are all down there, vanished into that consuming blankness. Other rooftops are visible nearby. Some are empty, stark against the sky. On others, you can see small groups of people huddled together, looking as lost and terrified as you feel. A few seem to be attempting the same thing you are considering, finding ways to cross to adjacent buildings. It looks incredibly dangerous. The gaps are wide, the parapets uneven, the surfaces potentially slippery. The air up here is cold and thin, whipping around you. It carries less of the metallic smell, but the chill feels deep and unnatural, emanating from the fog itself. You can feel the strange, static-like energy again, making your skin tingle. There's a low hum in the air, barely audible over the wind. It seems to come from everywhere and nowhere. At once, a subtle vibration that feels wrong. It's not the sound of the city is silent below. It feels fundamental, like the sound of reality being stretched thin. A quirky detail, the hum of the void. The rooftop itself is a patchwork of materials. Slate tiles lead flashing patches of tar or felt. Chimney stacks rise like sentinels. There are vents, pipes, maybe even storage sheds, or small rooftop structures. It's a cluttered alien landscape when viewed as a potential escape route. Not exactly the smooth, open highway you might have hoped for. Looking across the gaps, you try to assess the possibilities. Some buildings are close enough that a desperate leap might be possible, though the consequences of failure are obvious and final. Others are too far, requiring some kind of bridge. There's nothing readily available that looks like it would span these distances. No planks, no ropes. Unless your eyes scan the rooftops around you, looking for anything that could be pressed into service. Maybe a ladder lying flat, a sturdy length of pipe. Or is there a connecting bridge you missed? Often older buildings were connected by walkways or service bridges. At upper levels, a feature of urban planning that predates modern street layouts. Historians still argue whether the dense interconnected nature of some London districts with their warren of alleys and service passages at multiple levels was a benefit or a hindrance during various historical crises, facilitating movement for some while trapping others. In this crisis, perhaps those forgotten connections are the only hope. You move cautiously towards the edge of your current rooftop, peering across at the next building. It looks like an older structure, maybe a warehouse or office building. It's slightly lower than yours, but the gap isn't immense. The parapet on the other side looks crumbling in places. Risk assessment high, but the alternative is waiting. The fog continues its ascent. As you watch, the white edge flows over the roof of a 5-story building across the way. People you saw huddled there moments ago are gone. Silently, instantly. The speed of it is terrifying. There's no time to waste. You need a plan. Jumping seems like pure madness without assessing the distance properly, and even then a slight misstep. You look around your rooftop again. Maybe there's something here. Something to use. Over near a large chimney stack, you see a few pieces of timber lying around, leftovers from some repair work maybe. They're not long enough to bridge the widest gaps, but maybe they could work for a shorter span or as leverage. You head towards them, your footsteps echoing strangely on the rooftop surface. The air feels charged with tension. As you approach the timber, you notice something else. A small, brightly colored object tucked amongst the debris. You pick it up. It's a child's toy, a little wooden soldier painted red. How did it get up here? Was a child here? Are they gone? The toy is cold in your hand, an achingly poignant reminder of the lives being erased below. It feels significant, a small, tangible piece of the world being lost. A quirky detail that wrenches at your gut. You pocket the soldier, a strange instinct driving you to preserve this tiny fragment. Then you focus on the timber. It's heavy, weathered wood, definitely sturdy enough to bear weight if only it were longer. Other people from the attic are making their way onto the roof now, blinking in the unexpected light and cold air. They see the panorama of fog below the vanishing rooftops, the other desperate figures attempting to traverse the void. Despair flickers across their faces, quickly replaced by a fierce survival-driven focus. They start scanning the rooftops too, assessing the distances, looking for routes for materials. Someone points to a neighboring building. Look, that one. There's a walkway. You follow their gaze. Yes, on a slightly lower building, about 50 yards away, there appears to be a narrow elevated walkway spanning a small courtyard to connect it to another structure. It looks old, possibly disused, maybe even unsafe, but it's a continuous path, a horizontal escape route. It's not attached to your current building, though. You'd still need to get to that building first. The building with the walkway is separated from yours by a gap. Not a huge gap, maybe 10 feet, but enough to be a lethal fall. And the parapet on your side isn't level with the parapet on their side. It's higher. You'd have to jump down and across. Okay, that's the target, someone says, their voice strained. How do we get there? The timber you found isn't long enough. You look around again desperately. Is there anything else, any other possible route? Then you see it. Higher up on your building near the edge, there's a large metal structure, maybe part of a ventilation system or an old water tank support. It's heavy, bolted down, and it extends out over the gap slightly. Not far enough to reach the other building, but perhaps you could secure something to a unit. You explain your thought process to the others. If you had a rope or even a long, sturdy piece of something flexible, you could tie it to the metal structure, swing across, or pull the timber across after you. But there's no rope. Nothing like that on the rooftop. Someone else has an idea. What about clotheslines? Are there any up here? People used rooftops in London for all sorts of domestic purposes, including laundry. While public washhouses became more common in the later 19th century, rooftop clotheslines and drying spaces were still used, particularly in residential areas or buildings with mixed-use purposes. A quirky detail, but potentially a lifesaver. You start scanning the roof more intently, looking not just for building materials, but for everyday objects. No obvious clotheslines are visible from where you are, but perhaps closer to the edge or on a smaller adjoining rooftop, it's a long shot but worth investigating. The pressure is mounting. Looking down, the fog has now reached your building's third floor on some sides. It's climbing quickly. The silence emanating from it is absolute chilling. The lack of sound is more terrifying than any scream. It feels like the world is being muted, erased bite by bite. You decide to move towards the edge where you saw the metal structure and simultaneously look for clotheslines or anything else that could be used to span the gap. Others join you, their faces grim but determined. There's a sense of shared purpose now forged in the face of unimaginable horror. No longer just fleeing individuals, but a small temporary community united by the need to survive. You reach the edge of the roof near the metal structure. It's a heavy rusted frame bolted firmly into the stone. Definitely sturdy enough, but the gap looks wider from up close, and the drop is dizzying. You can see the fog below, swirling featureless white. No clotheslines immediately visible on your roof. You peer over the edge, looking down towards the lower sections of the building and the adjacent structures. Nothing useful in sight. Disappointment gnaws at you sharp and cold. The air is filled with the sound of the wind, the distant hum, and the heavy breathing of the people around you. The silence of the fog below seems to amplify these sounds, making them feel fragile and temporary. Someone spots something on the next building over. Look on the rooftop of the old tailor's shop. Is that a pulley system? You follow their gaze. Across a slightly larger gap than the first on the rooftop of a smaller, older building, there's a small wooden structure with a rope and pulley. It looks like it was used for hauling goods up from the street below, a relic of a time when deliveries might be made directly to upper floors. The use of external pulley systems for lifting goods was common in many older London buildings, particularly warehouses and shops in dense areas, a practice that faded with the advent of internal elevators and different logistics. Another historical tidbit turned potential lifeline, but that building is not the one with the walkway. It's a different direction entirely. Now you have two potential targets, the building with the walkway and the building with the pulley system. Which one is better? The walkway offers a path across buildings closer to what you need. The pulley system offers a way to move things, like your timber across a gap, but where would that lead? And getting to the building with the pulley system is still a jump. Decisions in the face of oblivion. It feels absurd weighing options like this when a sea of white death is rising below you. The fog has reached the 5th floor on your building now. You can tell by the way the windows vanish, the silence climbs. The cold intensifies. The walkway, someone says firmly, it's a path. The pulley, what do we do with a pulley? Agreement spreads quickly. The walkway building is the priority. Now how to cross the gap to The timber is too short, no rope, no other materials seem available. The gap is just wide enough to be impossible to jump safely, unless you make the gap smaller. You look at the metal structure again. It juts out a little. Could you somehow get onto it or use it as a launch point? It's high, maybe 4 or 5 feet above the roof surface, and the area around it is a tangled mess of pipes and vents. Getting onto it would be tricky, and jumping from that height, even if it reduces the horizontal distance, adds a vertical hazard. Desperate ideas flash through your mind. What about using the heavy timber as a ram? Could you smash through a wall to create a new opening? Unlikely. This building seems solid. What about trying to signal a helicopter? If there were any, they'd likely be trying to understand the fog, not rescuing people from rooftops yet. The air tastes coppery now, and the subtle hum seems louder, more insistent. The silence from below feels vast and hungry. Suddenly, someone points towards the gap between your building and the walkway building. Online, look. You follow their gaze. A few floors down, maybe on the 3rd or 4th level now, likely consumed by fog, but you can see the relative height. There was a small balcony or decorative ledge that extended out from the building's facade. From this height, you can see the faint outline of where it was. And from the building you want to get to, there was a corresponding feature. They didn't quite meet, but they came close. And maybe, just maybe, at the rooftop level, there was something similar that extended out. Perhaps a flagpole mount, a decorative gargoyle, or even just a particularly wide section of parapet. You scan the edge of your building where it faces the walkway building. It's hard to tell from your position, but there might be something that extends a little further out, just below the rooftop level. Something you couldn't see from the staircase. Something that could make the jump slightly less suicidal. You crawl cautiously towards that edge, ignoring the trembling in your limbs. The wind whips at your face. Below the fog is a solid wall of white rising relentlessly. It's reached the 6th floor. You peer over the edge. Yes, there it is. Just below the rooftop level, maybe 3 feet down, a small stone ledge juts out a few feet further than the rest of the wall. It looks like it was purely decorative, a feature of the building's architecture. Not designed for walking on, certainly not for jumping from, but it does reduce the gap. And if you could get down to that ledge, it might make the jump to the other building's parapet just barely possible. Getting down to the ledge is the next problem. It's too far to jump safely. You'd need a way to lower yourself. Still no rope, but then you see the timber again. It's heavy. Could you hold on to it, lower it over the edge, then use it somehow to help you climb down to the ledge? It's a desperate, half-formed idea. It feels incredibly risky. One slip, one loss of grip, and it's a long fall into the silent, waiting white below. But the fog is now licking at the base of the rooftop structures on your level. The metal structure near the edge is starting to disappear into the white. The silence is palpable, a physical pressure against your eardrums. You can hear the faint, high-pitched hum more clearly now, almost buzzing in your teeth. There is no more time for planning, no more time for hesitation. It's this desperate gamble or nothing. You turn to the others, your face set. You point to the ledge, then to the timber. They understand. There's a shared look of grim resolve. One person volunteers to help you lower the timber. Together, you edge it towards the precipice. It's heavier than it looks, cumbersome. You carefully slide one end over the edge, letting it hang down towards the decorative ledge below. It's not quite long enough to reach the ledge if held vertically from the rooftop, but if you climb down onto the wall itself, maybe you position yourself at the edge, heart pounding against your ribs like a drum. The wind screams around you. The sight of the rising fog is mesmerizing in its horror. It's like watching the end of the world in slow motion, street by street, building by building. Historians still argue whether the planning and infrastructure of London, designed for specific types of disasters like fire and flood, could have ever coped with an event that negated the very ground itself. But it seems clear that no existing system was prepared for something that simply made things and people cease to be. It's a type of catastrophe that rewrites the rulebook entirely. Okay, deep breath. This is it. You grip the edge of the rooftop, carefully lower yourself down onto the vertical wall, searching for footholds on the rough stone. It's precarious. The person helping you holds onto the other end of the timber, bracing it against the rooftop edge. You grip the timber yourself, trying to steady it. Slowly, inch by terrifying inch, you begin to lower yourself down the side of the building toward the small waiting ledge. Your muscles tremble with the strain. The stone is cold and unforgiving under your hands and feet. The timber scrapes against the wall. The wind tries to tear you away. The fog is now level with the rooftop in places, creeping like tendrils of smoke around the chimney pots and ventilation units. The silence is absolute right beside you now, emanating from the white mass. The cold hits you like a physical blow. You reach the level of the ledge. It's narrow, barely wide enough for your feet. You carefully transfer your weight, letting go of the timber, signaling the person above to hold it steady or drop it away. You stand on the ledge, pressed against the wall, trying to control your ragged breathing. The fog is directly below you, now maybe only 20 feet down. A featureless, moving floor of white. It feels wrong. Like solid ground has been replaced by an impossible emptiness. Okay, the ledge, the gap, the other building, the walkway. This is the moment. You look across at the target building. The parapet looks higher than your ledge, maybe 4 or 5 feet up. And the gap is still there, a void waiting to swallow you. You need to jump up and across. It's a leap of faith fueled by terror and desperation. A leap into the unknown over the silent, consuming white. You crouch slightly on the narrow ledge, gathering your strength. The wind whips around you. The hum is louder, vibrating in your chest. The cold is intense. You can feel the spray of the fog, a faint, chilling mist rising towards you. You have to jump, now, before the fog climbs higher, before the ledge disappears, before you lose your nerve. You jump. It's less a controlled athletic maneuver and more a desperate, clumsy lunge fueled by pure adrenaline and the visceral terror of the silent white rising behind you. Your leg muscles burn from crouching on the narrow, cold ledge. You push off your heart, leaping into your throat, the wind immediately snatching at you. For a brief, terrifying instant, you are suspended over the impossible gap, the silent, consuming white below you, a void waiting to catch you if you fall short. Your arms are outstretched, reaching for the rough stone parapet of the next building. Time seems to slow down, stretching the fraction of a second you hang in the air into an agonizing eternity. You see the gap, the horrifying drop, the way the fog is now flowing over. The edge of your previous rooftop, a silent white wave cresting and spilling over the parapet you just left. The faces of the people still on the ledge behind you are etched with a mixture of hope and dread, watching your desperate leap. Then impact. Your hands slap against the stone parapet, jarring your shoulders. It's rough, scraping the skin off your palms. You land awkwardly, legs scrabbling for purchase against the vertical face of the wall just below the parapet top. For a sickening second, you think you're going to slide back, fall into the silent abyss. But you hold on, fingers digging into cracks and crevices in the stone. With a supreme effort, you haul yourself up, pulling with your arms, kicking with your legs. The rough stone tears at your clothes, scrapes your knees. You grunt with the strain, your breath ragged in your chest. Finally, you flop over the edge of the parapet, collapsing onto the relatively flat surface of the rooftop. You lie there for a moment, chest heaving, the taste of dust and fear in your mouth. Your hands sting raw and bleeding. The wind whips around you cold and sharp, but you made it. You are on this rooftop. Silence. You push yourself up onto shaking hands and knees, then slowly stand, forcing your trembling legs to support you. The first thing you do is look back at the building you just left. The sight is horrifying. The white fog has completely consumed the rooftop you were just on. It's flowing over the edges around the chimney stacks, engulfing the ventilation units. The parapet is gone. The metal structure is gone. The very surface of the roof is being swallowed by the silent, featureless white. And the people who were still on that ledge waiting their turn or unable to jump, they are gone too. Utterly, silently vanished into the fog. There is no sound, no scream, no splash, just the inexorable silent ascent and consumption. It's like watching a photograph being erased pixel by pixel. A wave of nausea rolls over you, cold and heavy. You turn away, blinking back tears that threaten to blur your vision. Survival guilt, immediate and sharp. Why you? Why this rooftop, this jump, this narrow escape? You are on a new rooftop now. It's different from the last one. Less clutter perhaps, but still a landscape of slate, lead vents, and chimney pots. It feels vast and exposed. Other people are appearing on this roof, having presumably made the jump or found another way across. Perhaps higher up or from a different angle. There are maybe a dozen of you scattered across the rooftop, looking lost and stunned. No triumphant cheers, just silent, ragged breathing and wide, terrified eyes. Someone near you coughs a dry, rasping sound. You look at them, they look at you. A shared, silent acknowledgement of the horror witnessed and the impossible luck of being here. There's no time for introductions or commiseration. The fog is still rising, still climbing the sides of this building, now its silent white edge visible maybe 50 feet down. The immediate objective is the walkway you spotted from the last roof. It's further down this building's rooftop towards the back, spanning a courtyard to an adjacent structure. It represents a path forward, a way to move horizontally through the city's upper levels, hopefully staying ahead of the climbing death mist. You start moving across the rooftop, picking your way through the obstacles. The surface is uneven, treacherous in places. You step carefully, wary of loose tiles or slippery lead flashing. The wind howls around the tall chimney stacks, creating eerie whistling sounds. That subtle hum is still there, maybe a little louder, a low thrumming that seems to resonate in your bones. The others are moving too, a silent, determined procession, heading in the same direction. There's no leader, no plan articulated, just a shared primal instinct to keep moving, to keep climbing, to keep escaping. As you cross the rooftop, you pass areas that were clearly in use recently. There are abandoned tools near a vent, a half-finished repair job. Further on, near a raised section of the roof, you see evidence of something else entirely. A small makeshift enclosure. It's clearly old, made of rough wood and wire mesh. It looks like a pigeon loft. Rooftop pigeon keeping was a long-standing tradition in London, especially in the East End, providing both a hobby and a source of food or income for centuries, a practice that has largely faded in modern times. Wow, it's a quirky detail, this little relic of a forgotten pastime perched high above the city, now facing oblivion from a different kind of silent threat. This city holds so many layers of history, doesn't it? Each street, each building, each rooftop has stories buried within it. Stories that are now being erased. You reach the edge of the building, overlooking the courtyard where the walkway is located. It's down there maybe 20 feet below this rooftop level, spanning a gap of about 30 feet to the next building. It looks exactly as you saw it. Narrow, made of wood, possibly rickety. It looks like it hasn't been used in decades. Maybe a service passage or a way to move goods between businesses back in the day. The wood is weathered, some planks look warped or missing entirely. There's no railing, just the narrow walkway. It's another gamble, another precarious step, but it's something. Getting down to the walkway is the next challenge. There doesn't appear to be a staircase or ladder leading from this rooftop level down to it. Just the sheer wall, but as you scan the edge, you see something promising. A large cast iron pipe runs down the side of the building, presumably a drain pipe or part of an old plumbing system. It looks thick and sturdy, bolted to the wall at intervals. It might be climbable. It's risky. The pipe is old, probably corroded in places. The bolts might be loose, but it's the only option you see. The others arrive at the edge beside you, assessing the situation. Eyes follow the pipe downwards. A few people look hesitant, fear warring with desperation on their faces. The fog is higher now. On the lower floors of this building, the windows are starting to disappear. The cold is more intense, and the metallic tang is back sharper than before. That humming is definitely louder now, a low, persistent thrum that feels wrong. Someone volunteers to go first. They're younger, agile. Carefully, they test the pipe, gripping it tightly. They swing a leg over the parapet, find a foothold against the wall, and begin to lower themselves, relying on grip strength and balance. It's slow, tense work. Every scrape of shoe against pipe, every slight creak sounds unnervingly loud in the relative silence. You watch your heart in your mouth. Below, the fog is still climbing. It's like a tide coming in, but instead of water, it's white nothingness. And it brings silence. Utter, profound silence. Where is the noise of the city? The distant traffic, the sirens, the chatter of life, all gone swallowed. It feels like the fog isn't just erasing physical objects, but sound itself. The first person makes it down to the walkway. A small sigh of relief ripples through the group on the rooftop. They stand on the narrow platform, testing its stability carefully. It creaks ominously, but it holds. They give a thumbs up. Now it's your turn. You step up to the edge, grip the cold, rough cast iron pipe. It feels solid enough where you grab it, but you know you have to be careful. Test each handhold and foothold as you descend. You swing your leg over, bracing yourself against the building wall. The wind bites at you. You look down at the walkway below, then across the gap it spans to the next building. It looks further away from this angle. You start to climb down, hand over hand, foot by foot. The pipe is cold under your grip. The metal smells old, faintly metallic and earthy. Your body feels clumsy, your muscles protesting from the earlier exertion. You focus intensely on the pipe on the stone wall, blocking out the sight of the terrifying drop below and the silent climbing fog. Someone above you is starting their descent. You can hear their movements, the scrape of their shoes. Below, the person on the walkway is slowly starting to cross the gap, testing each plank. It's a slow, nerve-wracking process, a chain of desperate survival attempts. You reach the walkway. It's narrower than it looked from above, maybe 2 feet wide. The wood is splintered, warped. You step onto it, carefully feeling it shift slightly under your weight. It holds, though. You lean against the cold stone wall of the building for a moment, catching your breath. Your hands are shaking. You turn and look across the gap toward the next building. The walkway connects to a wall with a window or door opening. Looks like a service entrance high up. That's where you need to get. The person ahead of you is about halfway across the walkway, moving gingerly. The person behind you is just starting their descent down the pipe. The fog is now visible from the walkway level, its silent white edge licking at the lower parts of this building's walls. It's climbing faster than it seems from above. The cold is more intense, the metallic tang stronger. You start to cross the walkway. Each step is a conscious decision, a test of faith in the old weathered wood. It creaks and groans with every movement. You can hear the distant hum more clearly, hear a low resonant vibration that seems to come from the ground, or lack thereof. Halfway across, you glance down into the courtyard below. It's just a sea of white, featureless, silent, utterly empty. You realize the height you are, at the precariousness of your position, suspended over an impossible void. It's a dizzying thought. You quickly look forward again, focusing on the opening on the other side. As you approach the other building, you see that the walkway leads to a metal door set into the wall high above the ground. It looks old, perhaps locked. Another potential barrier. Of course, because surviving the jump and the rickety walkway wasn't enough, right? Building access in an existential crisis, 0.10 would not recommend. You reach the metal door. It's heavy rusted. You try the handle. Lock naturally. Panic tries to bubble up. You're trapped on a narrow walkway between two buildings with the silent death mist climbing relentlessly below and a locked door in front of you. Just classic London urban adventure, isn't it? Though normally it involves trying to find a public toilet, not escape existential dread. The person who crossed before you is already examining the door, running their hands over it, looking for a weakness. The person behind you is just reaching the walkway. Others are starting to descend the pipe from the rooftop. The fog is now level with the base of the walkway swirling just below you. It's so close you can feel its chilling presence, that weird static electricity, the metallic smell. The hum is loud now, vibrating in your ears, making your teeth ache. The person at the door is trying the handle again, pulling and pushing uselessly. Someone from the group descending the pipe shouts advice, their voice strained. Is there a lockbox? A key? It feels hopeless. You just survived a leap of faith, a climb down a pipe, a walk across a rotten plank, only to be stopped by a locked door. But then the person at the door gives a shout. Wait, it's bolted from the inside, but the bolts are old. They are pointing to the edges of the door frame. You can see where heavy metal bolts were presumably thrown from the inside to secure it. They look ancient, thick with rust. The door frame is stone. Maybe we can force it, someone suggests. The person who arrived first nods. It's worth a try. Together, you join them, pressing your shoulder against the heavy metal door. Others who have made it across the walkway add their weight. There are maybe 5 or 6 of you pushing together, muscles straining. The door groans in protest, the old metal scraping against stone. The bolts must be thick, set deep. It doesn't budge. The fog is higher. It's now curling around the supports of the walkway, rising towards your feet. The cold is intense, and the silence emanating from the white is absolute unnerving. You can feel its presence somehow. It feels like a drain on the air, on sound, on existence itself. You push again harder, everyone counting their breaths together. 1, 2, 3. You heave, putting everything you have into it. The door screams a tortured metal screech. One of the bolts seems to buckle slightly. Again, 1, 2, 3. Another heave. This time with a loud crack and scrape of stone, the door jolts inward a few inches. The bolts haven't retracted, but they have ripped partly through the old stone of the frame or the wood of the door itself. The gap is small, but it's enough. Hope surges sharp and sudden. It's not fully open, but it's a way in. Quick, get through, someone yells. You scramble forward, squeezing through the narrow gap. It's dark on the other side, smelling of dust and neglect. You're in a small service passage or room. Others are squeezing through behind you. You turn back, looking out through the gap. The fog is now completely engulfing the walkway. The people still on it. The people still descending the pipe, they are being swallowed by the silent white. It flows over them and they simply cease to be. No struggle, no sound, just gone. The horror is profound, soul deep. You are inside this building now, safe from the immediate touch of the fog. But at what cost? At the cost of the people you were just moments ago sharing a terrifying escape with. You pull the heavy door mostly shut, not bothering with the bolts, just closing it on the nightmare outside. The scrape of metal against stone is the only sound besides your own ragged breathing and the quiet movements of the others who made it through. You are in a narrow, dark corridor. The air is thick with dust. There are shapes of old crates or machinery in the gloom. A single bare light bulb hangs precariously from a wire overhead, casting weak, flickering light. You made it. For now. You lean against the wall, trying to catch your breath, trying to process the impossible horror you've just witnessed, the narrowness of your escape. Your hands sting from the jump. Your legs ache. Your mind reels. Looking around the small, dusty space, you see the faces of the other survivors. Gaunt, terrified, but alive. A small, fragile island of humanity in a city that is being silently erased. What now? You are inside a building, but you don't know where you are or where to go. Is this building safe? Will the fog eventually penetrate here? Does it climb into buildings or just consume them from the outside? So many questions, no answers. London's historical resilience has often been attributed to its complex and adaptable infrastructure and the tenacity of its inhabitants' qualities, tested by everything from plagues to fires to bombing raids. But this is different. This isn't a challenge to infrastructure, it's a negation of reality. You look at the others. Some are slumped against the walls, exhausted. Others are already peering into the gloom of the corridor, trying to see where it leads. The hum from outside is muted here, but still present a low, disquieting vibration. As you stand there trying to regain your composure, you remember the small red wooden soldier you pocketed on the previous rooftop. You reach into your pocket and pull it out. The paint is faded, the wood smooth with age. It's just a toy, a tiny, insignificant object. But holding it, you feel a strange sense of connection to the world that is being lost. A tangible piece of the history, the lives, the ordinary moments that are being wiped away. It's a quirky detail, a child's toy surviving when adults couldn't. It feels both meaningless and profoundly important. You look down the corridor. It stretches into darkness. There's no obvious signposting, no map. Just a path forward into the unknown depths of this old building. Historians still argue whether the deep interconnected basements and service tunnels of older London buildings, often repurposed and forgotten over centuries, would have provided viable escape routes in a theoretical ground-level disaster, or simply become death traps. Right now, you are hoping this applies to upper-level service passages too, and that this building has a route through, or better yet, a way higher up, a way to keep climbing. The sound of the fog is gone now, blocked by the thick walls of the building, but the silence outside feels immense, a presence in itself. The only sounds are your own breathing, the shifting of the others, and that persistent low hum. You don't know what lies ahead in this dark passage. More obstacles. Another way out, or just more building until the fog finds its way in. You have no way of knowing, but you have to move. You have to keep going. There is no other option. You take a deep breath, clutch the wooden soldier in your hand, and step into the darkness of the corridor, the others following close behind. One step, then another, moving forward into the silent, waiting building, away from the edge of the world you just escaped. And as you walk, you feel it. That strange, tingling energy is stronger in here, pulsing through the stone. The air feels heavy charged, and the hum is definitely coming from within the building now. From somewhere deeper inside. It's not over, not yet. Hey guys, tonight we went on a bit of a wild ride, didn't we? We plunged headfirst into a London, swallowed by an impossible fog, scrambling up buildings, leaping across rooftops and trying to outrun a silence that erases everything it touches. It's the kind of scenario that makes you appreciate solid ground, isn't it? Because let's be honest, in a world where the floor is literally gone, you probably won't survive this. It's a terrifying thought. But sometimes the most unsettling history isn't about the past, but about imagining an impossible future. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The journey is ending now. The chase is over. The frantic escape has faded into a quiet stillness. You found a brief moment of respite in the heart of an old building, away from the rising white. The air here is still the immediate terror, receding like an ebbing tide. Your muscles relax, the tension draining from your limbs. The frantic pounding of your heart begins to slow, easing into a calmer rhythm. The sting in your hands softens, becoming a dull ache. Close your eyes for a moment. Let the darkness behind your eyelids be a comfort, a quiet space after the blinding white of the fog. The city outside is silent now. It sounds muffled by the thick stone walls. That strange hum is still there, but perhaps it's fading now, becoming just a quiet vibration in the background, like the gentle thrum of a machine winding down. The dust motes dancing in the faint light settle slowly. The weight of the world outside, the impossible events, feels distant, a story told and ending. You are safe here for now. Let that feeling wash over you, a sense of peace settling in after the storm. The darkness is soft, the air is still. There are no more jumps to make, no more edges to cling to. Just quiet, just stillness. Let the sounds of the night, the soft hum of your fan, the gentle settling of your home lull you into a deep, peaceful rest. The story is done. The world outside is quiet. Let sleep find you now, a soft blanket pulling you down into calm, dreamless depths.